Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1861, Assumption based on limited information. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult to remove the ice soul flame from a body it had invaded. If an ordinary low-rank true god was frozen as such, Zen would have already won. Perhaps it was because Moore cultivated the snow godly way or because he had some special treasure protecting his body. He merely curled up into a ball and lay motionless on the ground, but by then the outcome of the Arena of Legends hadn't yet been decided. Still, Moore had lost the ability to resist. Zen walked over and leapt high into the air. The tips of his toes had gathered a powerful force that he charged right at Moore. Crack! Zen crushed Moore's body into a million pieces. Soon after, the world of ice and snow began to dissipate. When Zen returned to his room, his injuries disappeared. The 11th consecutive win. He pursed his lips. He didn't expect it to be so difficult. In truth, he had already predicted such difficulty, and so had Joy. It was widely known that Moore ranked 20th among the low-rank true gods. He was much stronger than the low-rank true gods that Zen had fought at that stage. Zen had practiced the god's killing sword array in preparation because of this. But never did Zen expect that someone would lower his rank just to challenge him. If he really fought all the way up in the Hall of True Gods, he would surely have to use the God's Killing Sword Array to deal with the powerhouses among the low-rank True Gods. But if he used the God's Killing Sword Array now, his opponents were likely to guess that he was from the Han clan and the Purple Soul Hall. Exposing himself too early was unfavorable to the Han clan. By then, within the Hall of True Gods, many clans would do all they could to deal with the True Gods of the Han clan. I must be careful next time. I can't accept any more challenges, Zen said to himself rather dejectedly. The warriors who lowered their ranks to challenge him were interrupting his plans. Even more dejected was Moore. After leaving the Arena of Legends, the fat on his round face kept shaking. The Ice Soul Flame, how could it be the Ice Soul Flame? It was no big deal to lose some points, nor did it matter to lose hundreds of Divine Might coins. But Moore was not satisfied losing to a proving godly warrior who fought with those beyond his level. Many disciples from the powerful clans on the floating islands had gone to the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. Moore was no exception, and he had also gone to its interior world arranged by Holy J. Since he mainly practiced the snow godly way, it was natural for him to yearn for the ice soul flame. If the snow divine spear could be combined with the magical ice flame, his power would be enhanced remarkably. But in the end, he failed. It was said to be impossible for warriors to comprehend the ice soul flame in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. Was this young man Holy J's disciple? After leaving his room, Moore withdrew from the Jade Wall of Legends. Hey, Moore, I heard that you were defeated by the anonymous man too, a long-haired man in white teased. Many people witnessed how the anonymous man accepted Moore's challenge. When he was defeated, the room's ranking changed once again. Those who paid attention to their fight immediately knew of the outcome. Yes, I failed. So what? Moore stared back at the man coldly. But the stranger was thick-skinned enough to ignore Moore's glare. What about it? Have you found anything new? Since you were defeated by that guy, he will definitely win at least 20 times consecutively. For a moment, Moore pondered before saying seriously, he can't break my snow divine spear, and I've successfully planted 4 frost marks on him. 4 marks? You must be joking. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. Why did you lose, then? He should have been dead already. People familiar with Moore knew just how powerful his snow divine spear was. With 3 frost marks, his opponents would most likely fail. With a 4th frost mark, many of the mid-rank true gods could die from it. It was amazing in itself that the anonymous man survived and defeated Moore. Are you serious, Moore? Don't lie to us. Maybe the guy sees the chance to defeat you from the very beginning. You must be feeling so ashamed that you fabricate a story, right? Someone chimed in. He was a monk with a large, bald head and big ears, as fat as Moore. In the area where Moore was, the best warriors of the floating island of the Moon Clan were gathered. There were nearly no weak warriors whatsoever. All of them had witnessed how strong Moore was. The power of his snow divine spear had been multiplied, making the fourth strike incredibly strong. It was difficult to believe that the anonymous man could block his fourth strike. The accusation made more glare at the monk. Believe it or not, it's true. I thought I would definitely win, but he was still breathing. He managed to defeat you with a single breath left. The monk asked further. Do you know what kind of method he used? Moore merely shrugged. It seemed like the ice soul flame. That guy has reached the consummation level of this skill. Upon hearing this, the long-haired man and the monk were stunned silent. Suddenly, a hoarse voice resounded from nearby. He entered the divine refinement forbidden land, said a masked woman. He must have come from one of the floating islands. The descendants of the floating islands had the luxury of entering the divine refinement forbidden land easily. Ordinary divine citizens in the divine land did not have such qualifications. Those who were sent to the divine refinement forbidden land were considered extremely lucky. I don't think so. He's also likely to be a secondary creature, the monk retorted. He grew up in a universe. Are you certain he's a secondary creature? The masked woman asked. But the monk shook his head. I just think it's possible. Even more speculated about Zen's origins. After a moment of thought, he asked, is it possible that he's from the GU clan? Not many GU clan warriors were on their floating island, but almost all of them were powerhouses. Though Holy J did not have his own floating island, he had a good relationship with Holy Bromley. If Holy J had his own disciples, it was highly likely that he sent his disciples to the floating island of the GU clan. It's quite possible. There must be at least a 70% possibility that the anonymous man is from the GU clan. I don't think we can draw any such conclusion until we know more about him, though. Many of them were rather convinced of Moore's conjecture. But the Moon clan didn't care much about the ranking of their floating island. No matter how well the GU clan performed, they couldn't change the status of the Moon clan in the top 3. They were only interested in the anonymous man. But they were certain that both the Mu clan and the Tang clan would be very interested in the news, as their rankings were one place higher and lower than the GU clans respectively. Because Zen had accepted Moore's challenge, many people were given hope. So the low-ranked true gods gathered at the gate of Zen's room filled with great passion. To challenge Zen, even the battle for the 100 rankings higher and lower than his had grown intense. In order to lower their rankings to qualify for challenging Zen, some masters even gave up and admitted defeat to each other. But much to their disappointment, Zen no longer accepted their challenges and chose his own opponents randomly. In this way, his opponents had once again become the warriors at his level, making it much easier for him to win. He won over and over again. On that day, he had 4 consecutive wins. In total, he had 14 consecutive wins, earning him 112,000 points. The extra points from winning a single round came up to almost 17,000. Meanwhile, the low-rank true gods in the same rank as Zen usually had over 1,000 points. To them, Zen's points made an astronomical figure. But 112,000 points was by no means his final goal. According to Joy, he needed at least 1.2 million points to protect the Purple Soul Hall and change the ranking of the Han clan's floating island. Zen still had a long way to go in the arena of legends. On each of the following days, Zen only fought 2 matches. 4 days later, he had accumulated 22 consecutive wins. Because of the string of wins, his ranking quickly rose from 500,000 to the top 10,000, top 1,000, and top 100, until he was finally ranked at the 96th. After the last 22nd round, his ranking rose directly from the 920th to the 96th. In other words, all the opponents he randomly selected were in the top 200. These were the best of the low-rank true gods, as well as the talents among the disciples of powerful clans on the floating islands. It was no surprise that they were all eager to accept Zen's challenge. Whoever defeated the anonymous man would receive a great number of points. Never did they expect the anonymous man to quietly take his leave from the Hall of True Gods. Chapter 1862, An Open Battle. The difference between the top 200 warriors in the arena of legends wasn't that large. There were more than 30 rich clans on the floating islands, and if each one possessed around 5 talents, then that would mean a total of 200 talents in the entirety of the floating islands. At this stage, Zen's opponents were now as strong as Moore. He remembered his battle with him. If Zen hadn't made use of the Ice Soul Flame, then he might have lost that fight. In order to face off against the top 200 low-ranked true gods, Zen would have to make use of the God's Killing Sword array if he wanted to ensure his victory. There was still a month and a half before the re-ranking of the floating islands, and so far, Zen had won 22 consecutive times and owned 370,000 points. He wasn't as anxious as he was before and only needed to wait for the last period to win a few more crucial matches. With this strategy, even if others were to discover that he was from the Han clan, it would be too late to attack him. This was all well thought out by Joy. However, his sudden departure from the Hall of True Gods left the other talents feeling quite anxious. Even Laquisha was upset. The young woman was under a lot of pressure, mostly due to the conflict between her and Langston. Their relationship at the moment was less than ideal, but she had to consider the overall situation as a member of the Han clan. Sometimes, the disciples of the rich clans on the floating islands ended up being more helpless than ordinary people. Laquisha was ranked 3rd among all low-ranked true gods. However, she found it difficult to win consecutively, and even if she did, she could only get around 1,000 points. Such a meager amount wouldn't be able to change their current situation. During this time, Pascal spent his days persevering in the arena of legends and participating in battles above his level. He challenged a top-ranked true god and found it quite challenging given his cultivation of a mid-ranked true god. After 3 consecutive wins, he was then defeated 3 consecutive times by other warriors. The top-ranked true god still had the advantage of flight, which made Pascal suffer while he was fighting with them. Even without saying anything, Laquisha knew that he did it all for her. Pascal didn't want to obey the Leng clan either. He wanted to help her with his own strength. Unfortunately, he might be far too weak to do so. However, Laquisha still had a chance. Just recently, an anonymous warrior appeared within the Hall of True Gods and participated in the battles above his level. That warrior won all 22 consecutive fights he took part in and gathered more than 300,000 points. After 7 or 8 more rounds, there was no doubt that his points would reach all the way to 1,000,000. If Laquisha could defeat that anonymous man and take away 90% of his points, she could have as many points as that of a consummate true god. Taking into account the number of people in the floating islands, such a feat could help the Han clan move up 1 or 2 places. Everyone, including Laquisha, expected the anonymous man to win. However, 5 days passed and his ranking remained at 96. He no longer participated in any battles, which greatly discouraged Laquisha. She would enter the Jade Wall of Legends almost every day, wandering around the anonymous man's door. It wasn't just her. Nellie Mew and Pearl Dongfang, ranked 1st and 2nd respectively, also waited. Sebastian Zhao, ranked 196th, was also waiting. Everyone who had the qualifications to challenge the anonymous low-ranked true god all waited and hoped for a miracle to contribute to their noble clans. Is the anonymous man afraid? He hasn't shown up in the Hall of True Gods for 5 consecutive days. He was one of the top 1,000 warriors in the beginning and he is now ranked 96th. No matter which clan he came from, his 22 consecutive wins and 300,000 cumulative points could get him everything he could ever possibly want. I guess he knows he isn't that powerful, so he stopped fighting after getting so many points. I don't think we'll be able to challenge him at this rate. We don't have the time to come here every day. Let's just leave. The speaker persuaded, but, contrary to his words, he stayed. Somewhere deep down, he also hoped that the anonymous man would open the door of his room. Have you received any latest news on the anonymous man? Laquisha asked Marcus Han when she saw him. Marcus Han was ranked 130th. He was a highly gifted warrior of the Han clan, but Laquisha remained high above him in terms of status and power. He nodded respectfully before answering her question. There's been no news, Your Highness. However, Moore seems to know something but doesn't want to reveal it. Moore was the strongest warrior the anonymous man had encountered so far. A weaker, low-ranked true god might not be able to bring out the anonymous man's real strength, but Moore could. The warriors of the Moon Clan are unkind and mean. The rankings of the floating islands have nothing to do with them, but Moore still refuses to tell us anything. One of the talents from another rich clan whined. Even Laquisha had to sigh. Sometimes, she even doubted whether Zen might be the anonymous man. That young man had shown quite a remarkable strength. He was able to kill Sheridan, who was ranked 40th at the time. Despite his victory having something to do with his luck, his performance was still amazing. It was definitely possible for him to make it by means of his own strength. She had sent a few friends to the Purple Soul Hall to inquire about Zen, but all they told her was that the young man was concentrating on cultivating himself under Joy's tutelage. Laquisha wanted to go to the Purple Soul Hall herself to see how Zen truly was doing, but he stayed in Joy's palace all the time. She hadn't forgotten Joy's mocking remarks and dared not go to the Purple Soul Hall anymore. It would be great if Zen was the anonymous man. If he was, then the Han clan's floating island would gain an exorbitant amount of points. However, there was still a chance that it wasn't Zen. There were so many rich clans on the floating islands, and it was possible for them to also house an amazingly talented warrior. I'm getting quite bored waiting for this anonymous man. How about I challenge you, Laquisha? A frivolous voice shouted over the crowd. Laquisha raised her head and saw that it was Quentin of the Qin clan. He was a core disciple of his clan and the heir of the Holy Emperor. If he hadn't used the wishing spell in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, then he would have most probably been in the top 10 by now. The Holy Emperor of the Qin clan helped Quentin suppress the effects of the Great Wishing Spell and become a low-rank true god. However, the impact on his body was still great. His talent was greatly limited. He was very powerful, but he was still only ranked 21st. Quentin held a grudge against Laquisha since it was her who brought Zen into the Skyland race and made him suffer such a huge loss. I'm not interested, she replied coldly. You don't want to accept my challenge, Your Highness? He asked, almost mockingly. I heard there's something wrong between you and Langston. Gossip in the clans always spread like wildfire. Quentin was not close to nor had a friendly relationship with Langston, but he still knew about the matter between him and his fiancée. It was said that a proving godly warrior emerged from your clan and killed Sheridan. I'm wondering if this proving godly warrior is the anonymous man. His name is Thad, right? It wasn't just Laquisha who had her suspicions of Zen being the anonymous man. Many warriors saw Zen kill Sheridan and hurt Langston after all. His strength wasn't really a kept secret. Since he had the capacity to kill Sheridan, then he most certainly had the qualifications to participate in battles against those with a higher cultivation base than him. However, Zen's name was never on the ranking list. He just directly participated in the battle anonymously. There were little to no clues offered to mere spectators. Even Quentin could only make his guesses. It's possible, but I've already sent people to inquire about this matter. Thad seems to be focused on learning the purple or a godly way from the demi-holy being of Arhan clan, Laquisha replied. She wasn't really sure about the current situation, but since she didn't have anything to hide, then there was no need to lie. I see, Quentin replied indifferently. He too was only speculating. At that moment, a majestic voice suddenly boomed in the Hall of True Gods. Harold Yu from the Luo clan is challenging Rochelle Mu from the Mu clan. Low-ranked True Gods can pay 40 points to watch the open battle on site. Chapter 1863, Method of Activation. As the voice rang throughout the area, Laquisha and the others temporarily froze in surprise. Here comes Harold again. He appears every time when the clans, floating islands are about to be ranked, Quentin chuckled. That's true. He really worked hard to keep the Luo clan's floating island above the time sea, agreed a genius from another clan. It is said that he has completely controlled the Everest Spirit Mountain, and his skills have probably improved so much, which is bad for Rochelle Mu. Actually, it can be considered as Rochelle paying off the debt for the Mu clan. It was known that the ranking of the floating islands had changed multiple times in the past few years. Most of the members of the Luo clan had died, while the few remaining ones left and hid away in the Forbidden Lands. Yet over the years, the Luo clan's floating island never fell into the time sea. It still even remained in the third lowest place among all the wealthy clans, and it was all because of Harold. Back then, when he had left the time sea, he had taken away a piece of the Jade Wall of Legends. Then every time the floating islands were ranked again, he continuously challenged a few consummate true gods, and thus obtained enough points to protect the Luo clan's floating island. In addition, every time the first person he chose was Rochelle. Back then, it wasn't just the Mu clan that had destroyed the Luo clan, the Hall of Holy Beings had also gotten involved. However, Murphy Mu was at the helm, and he was the one who subsequently launched a war in the evolutionary universe. Of course, Harold had released his anger on the Mu clan. The true gods went into thousands of battles in the arena of legends every day, but what garnered the most attention were the battles between the consummate true gods. These consummate true gods could have tens of thousands, or even millions of points at a time. The results of their battles determined the ranking of their floating islands, and that was one of the reasons why the holy beings gave so much importance to cultivating their own disciples. While the chances of disciples becoming holy beings were very small, they still played an important role. Now, the battles between the consummate true gods were usually open battles. Everyone from the floating islands could come to the battle site and watch. Warriors had to pay according to their own cultivation level to watch, as the low-ranked true gods needed to pay 40 points, mid-ranked true gods needed to pay 200 points, and top-ranked true gods had to pay 600 points. The consummate true gods all had reached the consummation of some kind of godly way, and they often had good comprehensions and strong thurges beyond way. These true gods could comprehend a lot from watching the battles, so they would gladly pay to spectate the fights. Therefore, numerous true gods had used their points to pay to watch the open battle after the announcement today. Meanwhile, Zen had been quite relaxed the past few days. During that period, he spent his time thinking about the Infinity Ruler. The last time he fought against Moore, he learned that strength was not an all-around power in the Divine Land. It was known that Moore wasn't really an outstanding warrior and was only a little stronger than Sheridan. However, he didn't get to figure out a way around Moore's strange skills. Moore had employed many weird techniques, especially the Snow Divine Spear activated by the Frost Marks. Its power had far surpassed the limit of a low-rank true god. Zen knew that the Snow Godly Way wasn't focused on such kinds of attacks, so he assumed that it must have been combined with the Thurges beyond some other special godly ways. If he could have activated the Infinity Ruler at that time, he would have had the confidence to see through the skill's origins and formulate counterattacks. He might even be able to make that powerful method his own. Unfortunately, it was difficult to survive from that kind of situation, let alone absorb such a kind of Thurge. The Infinity Ruler remained silent in Zen's mind. During this time, Master Evil was afraid that Joy would know about his existence, so he sealed himself. Zen had used many methods to activate the Infinity Ruler when it had been stored in his mind. For instance, he had used his own soul to envelop it and injected his own spiritual sense into the Infinity Ruler. He had even let a trace of chaotic energy into his mind, but the Jade Infinity Ruler still did not have any reaction. The key to activating the Infinity Ruler is in the internal momentum. All kinds of internal momentum of Godly Way, even the internal momentum of Thurge Beyond Way will activate it. He sank further into his thoughts. Every time the Infinity Ruler was activated, it was because he absorbed enough internal momentum. Up until now, the Infinity Ruler has not yet absorbed the internal momentum of the emotion-closing Godly Way, he said with a glint in his eyes. However, he did not intend to bring his emotion-closing Godly Way into the Infinity Ruler. After all, he mainly cultivated the emotion-closing Godly Way, so there was no need to add another Godly Way to the Infinity Ruler. He might be able to absorb all of the Godly Ways into the Infinity Ruler in the future, but now he was not in a hurry. After he thought about it for a few more days, an idea suddenly occurred to him. He felt like he'd finally found the answer to his problem. Can the internal momentum of the emotion-closing Godly Way activate the Infinity Ruler? What if I activate it, and then disperse the internal momentum quickly? It obviously was not a good method, but then again, his father didn't teach him how to use the Infinity Ruler. He even didn't know what its real power was, but he thought he could have a try. With that thought in mind, he quickly closed his eyes. Then, a faint golden light flashed from his soul. Forget myself. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were as calm as a still river without any emotion in them. But now, he was in Joy's palace. Although the demi-holy being was trustworthy, he was still reluctant to reveal his forbidden way of cultivation. Thus, he had to restrain his momentum to the maximum. At that moment, threads of internal momentum leaked out from his soul and slowly spread across his mind. Did it work? He muttered. He had always kept an eye on the changes to the Infinity Ruler. If he hadn't been in the state of emotion closing, he would have looked as if he was expecting something. However, he was emotionless now. His face was devoid of any joy or sadness. Buzz! A ray of light suddenly glowed along the edge of the Infinity Ruler. The light constantly swam around the scales, and then eventually stopped at its end. The emotion-closing Godly Way is ranked at the end of the 3,000 Godly Ways. He knew that every single Godly Way corresponded to a scale on the Infinity Ruler. Furthermore, the position of each Godly Way's scale seemed to have been prescribed, and they weren't arranged in the same order as his absorption of those Godly Ways. Now, the golden light had stopped at the end of the Infinity Ruler, which was where the position of the emotion-closing Godly Way should be. Just then, the scale began to absorb the internal momentum he had released. At the same time, he felt his eyes burn as two golden rings glowed around his pupils. It's done, he exclaimed. After that, the first thing he did was to absorb back all the internal momentum in his mind. He did so because he wanted to activate the Infinity Ruler by the emotion-closing Godly Way, but he didn't really want to let the Infinity Ruler absorb the emotion-closing Godly Way. The golden rings in his eyes still shone even after he had retrieved all the internal momentum of the emotion-closing Godly Way. The golden rings allowed him to see his surroundings normally, but once he saw other beings' internal momentum of the Godly Ways, he could quickly see through their mystery and absorb them into the Infinity Ruler. He couldn't believe it. His inadvertent attempt actually worked. His face was twisted into ecstasy after he freed himself from the state of emotion closing. Through such a method, he could easily solve many problems he had encountered and be more unrestrained in comprehending the internal momentum used by other true gods. The rings in his eyes lasted for about 5 minutes before they slowly dimmed. The moment the light was gone, Joy's voice slowly cut into the silence. When Zen heard the sudden voice, he thought that Joy had noticed what he just did. Nervousness coursed through his body as Joy said, "Harold is going to challenge Rochelle. It's an open battle. You can watch the battle after you enter the Jade Wall of Legends." "Harold," Zen exclaimed with raised brows. Harold was the one who had taken away Zen's sister back in the central region. Back then, he was able to catapult Zen several hundred miles away with the power of just one finger. At that time, Zen secretly swore that he would definitely defeat that guy one day. He never expected that this young man was his father's chief disciple, Harold Yu. Wasn't the floating island of the Luo clan destroyed? Why could he enter the arena of legends to challenge Rochelle? He asked. He was very confused, but Joy just gave him that one message, then kept silent, and did not answer his question. In any case, he didn't wait any longer and rushed into the Jade Wall of Legends. Soon enough, he reached his destination and paid 40 points to enter a huge world. A bloody red setting sun hung at the edge of the world, which seemed to be washed over with blood. It even had a salty, coppery smell as well. Although it was a made-up space, everything in it looked absolutely real. So many people, Zen whispered helplessly. Everywhere he looked was filled with spectators. He saw countless proving godly warriors, low-rank true gods, and mid-rank true gods at a single glance. Just when the anonymous man had arrived, all the spectators immediately paid attention to Zen. Chapter 1864, Challenge Accepted. There were different expressions on the faces of the low-rank true gods as they looked on at Zen. Some admired Zen for his performances while some looked on warily. Is him the anonymous man? He has not even proven a godly way, and yet he ranks 96th. What's important is that he defeated Moore. We are well aware of Moore's strength. Moore is most likely to enter among the top 10. And this anonymous man defeated him. You mean to say that this anonymous man is likely to enter the top 10 then? How many points will he accumulate then? Quote. The participants of this open battle were yet to make their appearances, but Zen already seemed to be the crowd's favorite. Apart from the low-rank true gods, even the mid-rank and top-rank true gods seemed to be interested in Zen. After all these clans were investigating the background of the anonymous man, and they had already heard of him before. LaQuisha also noticed him. She bypassed the crowd and tried to get closer to Zen. It was the first time she saw this famous anonymous man. Zen's face was in a blurry state, and so she could not really make out his features. Moreover, his redemption armor had also been changed to a different hue. LaQuisha continued to stare at Zen. She felt a familiar feeling tugging at her from inside, but she could not quite place it. If it was really Zen, she would not be able to confirm in front of so many people. Zen boldly smiled knowingly, as he looked at LaQuisha's bewildered pretty face, since no one could see his expression. LaQuisha was fully aware that everyone was staring at them as she said politely, "Nice to meet you." The anonymous man. What's the matter? He lowered his voice so that his voice could be deeper. It was easy to change his voice. "In the Hall of True Gods, can you accept my challenge?" LaQuisha said in a soft voice. Anyone who challenged the anonymous man was to earn his points, but LaQuisha tried to be as sincere as she could. Zen smiled even more when he saw LaQuisha's earnest and careful face. However, before Zen could answer, a woman wearing a black suit so tight that it seemed like her second skin, walked towards him quickly. She had black hair that was tied into a ponytail, complete with bangs in the front. Her beautiful and dignified face was brimming with infinite vitality, emitting a strong aura. As she walked, the people around stepped aside. She glanced at LaQuisha indifferently, almost with a look of disdain in her eyes. "You have already been defeated by me. Please don't embarrass yourself again." "You," LaQuisha frowned at the lady. "The so-called defeat happened 3 months ago. She and the woman were evenly matched in strength, so she tried to challenge her again. But the woman always refused to fight with her on the pretext of not fighting with losers. LaQuisha also unfortunately never encountered her again in any of the random battles." The woman really didn't bother about LaQuisha's turmoil of emotions. She stared straight at Zen and said, "Are you the anonymous man who won 22 battles consecutively?" Zen glanced at her and nodded, "Yes, that would be me." "After the open battle, you will have to accept my challenge," the woman said in a commanding tone as she continued to stare at Zen. Zen met far too many rude people to really care much about her tone. He just asked indifferently, "Why should I?" On the other side, LaQuisha looked coldly at the woman. She totally despised her overbearing nature. If you win, I'll give you a high-quality supreme primordial weapon, the woman said, confident that Zen would not be able to refuse her. Her words also caused an uproar among the low-ranked true gods around her. There were a great number of supreme primordial weapons in the divine land, but most of them were of inferior quality. And the supreme primordial weapons that could be called high quality were very few. To top it, they were kept only by the wealthy clans on the floating islands. It was generous and little unusual for the woman to bet on a high-quality supreme primordial weapon. The real strength of that anonymous man has not been tested yet. After all, nobody can deny that more lost to him. Nellie must be really confident to place such a bet. It's very normal for her to have that kind of confidence. After all, she ranks first among the low-ranked true gods. Nellie Mew is always so strong. LaQuisha sighed in her heart. She did not have the same courage nor the confidence as Nellie Mew. She could not help but step back 2 steps. Although she was extremely talented, she lacked in personality. It seemed that there was no chance now for her to challenge the anonymous man. She could only secretly hope that she would encounter him later in the random battles. Nellie Mew of the Mew clan. Zen's eyes narrowed as he tried to place her identity. Currently, Zen had shifted all his hatred towards Murphy Mew. However, he had gotten the news from Win, Holy J and LaQuisha that the murder of his father couldn't be just Murphy's doing alone. At this stage, Zen was still unclear about the disputes in the past. But, he was very clear about his intentions towards Murphy. After all, it was him who had initiated a war in the evolutionary universe. A piece of high-quality supreme primordial weapon. I'm afraid that is not enough. Zen said with a smirk. Nellie's eyes suddenly became cold as she said, not enough. Zen shook his head and chuckled. If I keep winning the battles continuously with the low-ranked true gods, the points that I accumulate will be equivalent to a consummate true gods. I can change the rankings of some floating islands at that time. Think about it, isn't it too good a deal for a clan to use only one high-quality supreme primordial weapon to raise its ranking? When they heard that Nellie offered a high-quality supreme primordial weapon to challenge Zen before, all the low-ranked true gods present thought that it was a good deal for Zen. But now, Zen totally changed their perception and realized it would be a good deal for Nellie. It would be very worthwhile to spend a piece of high-quality supreme primordial weapon, in order to improve the ranking of the floating island. Hearing this, Nellie was not that easily persuaded. She was slightly stunned and then sneered, are you so confident that you will win all the time? If you continue to choose your opponents randomly and meet me somehow, I can still defeat you and end your winning streak. If at all he lost, Zen would lose 90% of the points he got from the extra rewards. Are you sure you can beat me? Zen asked. Hearing Zen's words, Nellie's vigorous eyes flashed as she said, I have seen many men as rampant as you. I'd like to see the look of despair in you when you are trampled by me. Since you said that was not enough, then what more do you want? Just name it. Zen thought for a while and said, 3 second-rank supreme primordial weapons. My, aren't you greedy? Nellie sneered coldly, but she still nodded and said, I accept. I will decide the time to challenge you, but I promise the time will be before the re-ranking of the floating islands, Zen added. Okay, said Nellie as she raised her head. If I win, you can give her the 3 second-rank supreme primordial weapons, Zen said, pointing towards LaQuisha in the corner. What? A green light flashed in Nellie's eyes, that contained infinite life energy. She stared at LaQuisha with a very spiteful expression. LaQuisha was shocked too, hearing Zen's condition. She never thought that the anonymous man would suddenly mention her. What is going on, she thought. Why should I give them to her? She is a total nobody. Are you from the Han clan? Nellie asked, looking at Zen furiously. Currently, she was the most eye-catching low-ranked true god among the younger generation. In fact, Nellie and LaQuisha were the 2 most talented girls in the floating islands. The 2 girls had their own advantages. Nellie was straightforward and lively, while LaQuisha had a gentle and sober personality. It was inevitable that people would compare the 2 girls to each other. Moreover, Nellie was extremely proud and arrogant, and she did not even consider LaQuisha as her equal. She did not like it at all when others compared her with LaQuisha. You can keep guessing whether I'm a disciple of the Han clan or not, Zen said indifferently. This is the condition. It is up to you whether you want to accept the deal or not. Last time, Zen had bet on 550 divine might coins with more. As a result, after Zen had defeated more, that slimy fellow had disappeared. With Zen's current identity as the anonymous man, it was impossible for him to go to the Moon Clan's floating island. Even if he defeated Nelly, his identity still couldn't be revealed, so it would be better to hand over the stake to Laquisha. As for whether or not he was a disciple of the Han clan, they could keep guessing for eternity. Nelly coldly glanced at Laquisha. What Zen asked of her was undoubtedly a great humiliation, but in order to challenge Zen, she gritted her teeth and agreed. I'm glad to hear that, Zen replied with a nod. He then walked over to Laquisha and asked with a smile, did you just say that you wanted to challenge me? Laquisha didn't know what had happened. She was still in a daze, but since the anonymous man asked her, she nodded and replied, yes. After I defeat that woman, I will accept your challenge, Zen continued with a smile. What? For some reason, Laquisha was a little nervous in front of the anonymous man. But I can't afford 3 supreme primordial weapons. Laquisha actually could afford it, but she was unwilling to do so. Oh, don't worry about it, I will not ask for anything if you lose. Zen laughed strangely. In meantime, Nelly was fuming with rage. Chapter 1865. The Strength of the Consummate True Gods. It was clear to everyone that the anonymous man didn't care one bit about the 3 supreme primordial weapons. It was obvious that he had a strong grudge against Nelly and was trying to irritate her on purpose. Nelly, on the other hand, who had noticed his partiality for Laquisha, was now in a bad mood. But, I don't think that's a good idea. Laquisha was surprised at this, having not expected what was happening. I will accept your challenge if you will accept my condition, Zen said. Of course, Laquisha said, her lips curving into a lovely grin and eyes wandering to Nelly. Laquisha's mocking was the last straw for Nelly and her irritation showed on her countenance. Zen's attitude towards her was nothing more than provocation and insult. But she knew that it was improper for her to vent her anger at Laquisha. So she rushed over to Zen and demanded an answer from him. What is the meaning of all this discrimination against me? Zen merely raised his head and gazed into the distance, not bothering to pay any attention to Nelly. He just pointed into the distance and said, the battle begins. In the distance, the shadow of a slender figure lengthened as it moved in the blood-red wilderness. It belonged to a petite woman. She was dressed in a blood-red robe and walked slowly along the vast wilderness. A strong killing intent emanated off of her. Zen could feel the threat of death across the vast distance that separated them. Her killing intent was like a sharp knife, pressing against everyone's hearts. With just a glance, the knife could pierce through their hearts and take their lives. Rochelle Mew. So this is the aura of a consummate true god. Zen's eyes narrowed. Joy was a demi-holy being and had an aura that was completely different from that of Rochelle's. Zen didn't think that Joy's aura was more powerful than Rochelle's. It's Rochelle. What a strong killing intent. Her cultivation of the murdering godly way is already perfect and it is said that she has also grasped 3 other thurgies beyond the murdering godly way. It seems that she has made a lot more progress. But will she still be defeated brutally by Harold this year? Since the destruction of the Luo clan's floating island, Harold challenged Rochelle every year, and every year, he would ruthlessly defeat her. It was strange that Rochelle never turned down Harold's challenges when she had the option. According to the rules, consummate true gods only needed to complete 1 open battle before the new ranking was determined. She only needed to challenge another consummate true god before Harold could challenge her. But Rochelle kept fighting him and continued to lose against him. It looked like she was willing to take him up on his challenge every single time. This resulted in a rumor on the floating islands that this precious girl of the Mew clan was a born masochist. She would be happy even if Harold cruelly defeated her every single time. That's my elder sister, Nelly said, smiling proudly as she glanced at Zen to see if he had registered what she had said. Nelly was a dignified true god but she was still a woman. Minutes ago, Zen's obvious partiality towards Laquisha had made her madly jealous, and now, she wanted to prove herself to him. She was proud of her sister and took this opportunity to remind him that Rochelle was her older sister. But Zen didn't respond to her. Instead, his gaze wandered over to the other side where a young man stood opposite Rochelle. Harold. So I finally see you again, Zen muttered as he stared at Harold. What did you say? Nelly asked, trying to pay close attention to the anonymous man beside her. I wasn't talking to you. Zen snapped at her. How dare you? Nelly said, her eyebrows rising angrily. She had never before met someone who dared ignore her to this extent. She was so angry, she could swallow him whole. A big smile adorned Laquisha's face. She didn't know if the anonymous man was Zen, but she was happy that he had helped her vent her frustration on Nelly. In contrast to Rochelle, who was looking murderous, Harold remained calm. He looked unruffled, as if nothing in the world could ever affect him. Zen had felt this kind of aura when he had first seen Harold. At the time, he hadn't understood how powerful it was. He had only gotten the vague impression that the entire great world was afraid of him. Harold looks so mysterious all the time. He has taken control of the Everest Spirit Mountain. It is said that even the holy beings couldn't defeat him. Rochelle will be a piece of cake for him. Don't talk nonsense. Don't you know that the power of the Everest Spirit Mountain cannot be used inside the Jade Wall of Legends? Besides, Rochelle has made great progress. Everyone has watched her open battle with Walton. It is said that she still retains her strength. Other than the two people in the distance, Zen's attention was also paid on what the others were talking about. He was unfamiliar with the Divine Land, and he needed to get as much information as he could. It was then that Harold spoke. Pleasure to meet you again. This is the 16th battle between us, if I remember correctly. Prior to this, Rochelle had lost to him 15 times. It was hard for others to imagine that with her level of arrogance, Rochelle had managed to endure so many failures. I will not lose to you this time, she said calmly. Harold smiled noncommittally and said, every time I earn my points from you, I'm overwhelmed with guilt. The true gods began to whisper among themselves at Harold's words. What an obvious lie. Everyone knows that he has a terrible relationship with the Mu clan. In fact, the Luo clan has been completely destroyed, and there is no possibility for them to rise again. Then why is Harold so persistent? Many people thought that Harold was an outstanding warrior. If he gave up acting against the Mu clan in the Hall of Holy Beings, and gave up rescuing his master Mike, he might even be given the title of a holy being in the future. Or he could even establish his own clan on a floating island above the time sea. No possibility to rise again, right? Zen muttered, rage flashing in his eyes. He clenched his fists as the image of the devastated floating island of the Luo clan crossed his mind, and fury rose from the bottom of his heart. One day, he would revitalize their floating island and look down upon every large clan that was present. Right now, he was just a nobody who needed to hide his name. Any large clan was a great force that remained beyond his reach. He still needed to hide himself well and move forward carefully. You don't have to feel sorry, Rochelle said nonchalantly. I will take back all the points. Saying thus, she raised her hands, 2 rays of light flashing around them before 2 weapons appeared in her hands. In her right hand was a short silver machete with an arc-shaped blade. The thick, broad blade was emitting a faint blue light, and inside the blue light was a narrow line of golden Sanskrit. In her left hand was a short sword that looked rather ordinary. Harold leisurely put his left hand behind his back, while the fingers of his right hand continued to move, as if he was calculating something. He didn't pull out any weapon but merely said, let's begin. Rochelle's eyes flashed. She moved towards Harold in one big stride and the redness in her eyes spread along her cheeks to the back, leaving 2 blood-red tracks behind her. She was incredibly fast. Rochelle quickly approached him, as if she was moving like the wind. She silently drew an arc in the air with the short machete in her right hand. Harold was rigid as wood and moved stiffly but numbly to the other side, easily avoiding the slash. The arc in the air began to expand, and before long, it had grown into one that was 1,000 feet wide. Once it had fully activated the energy contained within it, it created a wave of blood-red power that stretched to the end of the wilderness before dissipating. This slash alone has such great power. The entire power of this attack had condensed in her machete from the very beginning. Zen said wondrously, stunned as he watched the monstrous wave of blood-red power. This was the first time he had watched a battle between 2 consummate true gods. Chapter 1866, An Unprecedented Body Refining Technique. Rochelle held a short machete in one hand and a short sword in the other. She resembled a gazelle in her stance and fighting technique, quick and nimble. Harold had avoided all of Rochelle's attacks with the simplest moves. He had been able to predict her moves as if he was able to foresee everything. They had faced each other in battle so many times before, and every fight ended in a life-and-death situation between them. They were very familiar with each other's personalities and fighting styles. But in this particular fight, Harold was much calmer and more focused. He dodged everything, ignoring all of Rochelle's attacks. It seemed that he was confident he wouldn't get hurt at all. Splash! Each cut of Rochelle's short machete triggered a terrible blood wave that spurted and scattered across the vast space. It was as if the very space bled with each stroke of the machete gliding through the air. The disciples of wealthy clans on the floating islands were awed at what was unfolding in front of their eyes. A scene like this was very rare, and only during an open battle between 2 consummate true gods were they able to witness something like this. Zen, on the other hand, was tired of it. After all, he had witnessed much more terrifying effects of battles between Supreme Lords when he was in the evolutionary universe. This fight was not a big deal compared to that. However, it should be recalled that the evolutionary universe was still the inner world of Holy Mike, and it shouldn't be compared with the divine land. It was easy for those supreme lords to destroy a supreme world in the universe, but it was a hard task for them to turn a mountain upside down in the divine land. The exchange of blows between Rochelle and Harold was gaining speed at an alarming rate. The two of them rapidly circled in the air, launching from the ground. Without any warning, she disappeared from behind him and suddenly reappeared above his head. In an instant, a bright red blade radiance slashed down on him. Space travel. Zen's lips were pressed into a thin line. Perhaps Harold was not expecting this move from Rochelle, or he might have had deficiencies in his cultivation. As she slashed downward from above him, he had no time to dodge the attack. Momentary surprise flickered in Harold's eyes. Unexpected by everyone, he grabbed Rochelle's blade radiance in his fingers. Crack, 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 crack. How awe-inspiring the power of blade radiance was. When Harold was able to constantly avoid Rochelle's blade radiance earlier, its power just transformed into billowing waves of frost and dissipated immediately. But now, as he caught the blade radiance in his hand, its power poured forth, and he had difficulty fighting against it. Dark blue light radiated from Harold's hand. With the protection provided by the light, he forcefully pulverized Rochelle's blade radiance into pieces. However, his facial expression turned much more serious. He retreated and traveled quickly through space, as if he wanted to put as much distance as possible between himself and her. Do you feel strange? Rochelle smiled smugly, like a cat about to kill its prey. Did your calculations fail you? His head down, Harold kept clenching and unclenching his fingers. A strange look appeared in his eyes. Well, I might have been wrong in some of my calculations. Zen did not react with anything when he heard this exchange. He wasn't able to understand the meaning behind the conversation at all, but it raised a huge uproar when the audience heard it. I can't believe that Harold calculated something wrong. How could it be possible? He had fought Rochelle for so many times already, and he didn't calculate anything wrong in the past. Has the Mu clan created some powerful method for Rochelle to be able to interfere with the accuracy of Harold's calculations? Wasn't it said that the cultivator of the evolution godly way could calculate anything even through chaos? It seems that Harold can't even calculate and predict Rochelle's attack. He's going to lose. Something clicked in Zen's mind after he had heard these words. He finally understood something that had been bothering him for a long time. How could Harold defeat Rochelle 15 times in a row? He had used the evolution godly way. Mike was the first to completely comprehend the evolution godly way. His name became the first one that was engraved on its godly way tablet. After Mike became a holy being because of his use of the evolution godly way, many people flocked to the tablet of the evolution godly way as they also hoped to comprehend it. However, very few people were truly able to comprehend it. The evolution godly way was too convoluted. It was very difficult to comprehend, and even harder to use once it was comprehended. Mike brought people's attention to the evolution godly way and became a holy being because of it. However, only a handful of people really knew where he had gone to with the evolution godly way. It was very rare for holy beings to fight against each other in the divine land. By contrast, the evolution godly way that was used by Harold was more familiar to the true gods. He calculated a number of factors that could affect the outcome of the fight. These included the opponent's height, cultivation level, strength, even the direction of the light and other environmental factors. He was able to predict all kinds of possibilities with one hand, and could even calculate the opponent's next move with the evolution godly way. Rochelle, on the other hand, had cultivated the murdering godly way to the maximum level. Her own strength was nothing to be looked down upon. In the entire divine land, excluding the holy beings and demi-holy beings who were stronger than her, no consummate true gods had the confidence to say that they could win against her. However, Harold had already won against her 15 times using his evolution godly way. Every time she made a move, Harold could calculate and predict her next move through the way she blinked, her heartbeat, her involuntary actions, and so on. He had never made a mistake before. His ability was revered as a miracle by the countless true gods in the divine land. They had never seen anyone use the evolution godly way the way Harold used it. Someone even speculated that Harold could foretell the future using the evolution godly way. The reason why he had stayed in the Everest Spirit Mountain and didn't change his side in the war was that he had a premonition about the future of the Luo clan. He helped the Luo clan unremittingly, as he predicted that sooner or later, Mike would be brought back to life. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Harold was already able to calculate everyone's capabilities. But it would be outrageous to say that he could really foresee the future of the divine land. If a leaf fell from the tree, one could know where the leaf would land in the end if the height of the branch and the intensity of the wind were known. Even without using the evolution godly way, some gifted true gods could do that. However, in the divine land, there were countless true gods and divine citizens. There were also a multitude of variables that should be considered. No matter how powerful the evolution godly way was, it was impossible to calculate and predict the future of the divine land. But that wasn't important now. Harold had calculated something wrong for the first time in the battle with Rochelle. "I'm glad that your calculations were off," Rochelle told him with a smug look on her face. "Let that tattered floating island of the Luo clan sink into the time sea this time. It's really annoying." As soon as she finished speaking, Rochelle suddenly launched herself into the air. Little rays of blood-red light faintly glowed and enveloped her entire body. Then, in the blink of an eye, she disappeared from Harold's sight again. Harold's left index finger was constantly being pinned under the clasp of his thumb, and the little finger popped out. As he was calculating, his expression became even more dire, as if he could not really calculate his opponent's next move. "Since you already know you are unable to calculate my movements, it would be pointless to waste any more energy in trying," Rochelle said in the void. As soon as she finished her statement, a thick ray of blood-red light appeared in the air. Rochelle's figure materialized on the other side, and a part of the blood light extended towards Harold's chest. Puff! By the time the blood radiance had dissipated, another shocking wound had appeared in Harold's chest. His body had been cut open almost in half, leaving only a sliver of flesh connecting the two parts of his body. "Oh my goodness, Harold has been cut in half by Rochelle. I've told you, the reason why Rochelle lost to Harold so many times before was because of the evolution godly way. If we would consider their real strength, it would appear that Harold is not stronger than her. I thought Harold was going to defeat his opponent easily. I spent all my money betting on him." Looking upon this scene, Zen also appeared a bit worried. Although Harold wouldn't actually die, would the Luo clan's floating island fall into the time sea because of his failure? Harold's face was still calm. He extended his hand and gently pressed the wound in his chest. His broken body quickly merged into one. The shocking wound eventually disappeared. Harold then said in a stern voice, "The floating island of Luo clan won't fall into the time sea. I had already defeated you for 15 times before you knew how to deal with my deduction technique. It must be those old men from the Hall of Holy Beings who put you up for this. You wouldn't have come up with these ideas on your own. In that case, I can let you and the old men of the Hall of Holy Beings watch as I tear up your bodies and trample on your floating islands in the future." His shoulders suddenly trembled, and the clothes at the back of his shoulders suddenly expanded. In addition, his chest, thighs, and almost every part of his body began to swell up. Everyone watched this scene with curiosity and trepidation, even Zen was stunned speechless. In the blink of an eye, the frail and weak young man transformed into a tall, muscular man. His clothes were ripped into pieces, and the veins on his muscles stood out prominently. The strength source is flowing in his blood vessels instead of blood. How is he able to do it? As he saw the situation, Zen was also astounded. A true god's strength was not determined by the size of his muscles, but by the strength source itself. It seemed that Harold had displayed a new body refining technique that was yet unheard of in the divine land. Chapter 1867, 3 Punches. Across the entire divine land, no one placed much value on body refining skills. Even the might godly way wasn't truly welcomed here. The conservative true gods were still focused on condensing the godly tile in a traditional way, in an attempt to attain the consummation of true god realm and become holy beings. This was a path that had been tried, tested and proved by countless true gods. It was true that ever since the ancient times, only a few people had been capable of standing at its peak, but this remained a successful path. That said, this world certainly didn't lack warriors who could take the lead to a new path. At the time, Mike had cultivated the evolution godly way alone and created the evolutionary universe. However, there were only very few people like Mike. The paths that were yet to be discovered by people were filled with unknown fog, and some of them even had a huge pit. One could only imagine the difficulty of crossing them. Just like the primal chaos technique that Zen had cultivated, until now, it had been difficult for him to condense a godly tile. If it wasn't for the strange mud, Zen probably still wouldn't have any clue. The crowd surrounding Zen started whispering, a low hum spreading throughout the group. "I can't believe that Harold used such a strange body refining skill," someone murmured. "It's completely beyond the 8 path platforms and the 9 divine stars. What is this strength source? How can it replace blood?" Someone else said, completely dumbfounded. "That isn't what Harold would do. Isn't he good at calculating the opponent's flaws and killing them in the simplest way? To anyone who knew Harold, he was considered to be one of the most modest and quiet. When the Luo clan's floating island had been destroyed, Harold had left without saying a single word. When he turned his head to take a final look, his tender eyes were filled with reluctance, and then he disappeared from the wealthy clan's sight. For a long time, he had even been forgotten by plenty. It was also throughout that period of time that the Luo clan's floating island's ranking had dropped significantly. Just when the wealthy clans thought that the Luo clan's floating island would sink into the time sea by the next time's ranking, Harold strangely appeared in the arena of legends. Using his own strength alone, he had nearly shouldered the entire Luo clan's floating island. Following such, the Luo clan's floating island had been fixed in the third place to last. In other words, it hadn't fallen, not even one place, and it managed to maintain the position for many, many years. All this was thanks to a man's loyalty and tenacity. But today, for some reason, he came forth presenting his muscles to all the true gods for the very first time. The muscles all over his body were wildly bulged, radiating the beauty of power. That said, his head hadn't changed at all. It seemed rather incongruous to have a huge and thick body combined with a small head. When Rochelle saw this scene, she jumped backward, somewhat subconsciously. Her figure seemed to have traveled through space 3 times in a row. With a distance of several thousand feet, she stared strenuously at Harold. Rochelle, on her behalf, felt very pleased to mislead Harold's deduction technique. All this time, Rochelle had always thought that her strength was above that of Harold. It wasn't that she didn't stand a chance against him, but more that her moves were all exposed to Harold through his deduction technique. Despite Harold's techniques, her blood-condensing machete and mortal dust sword were both first-rank supreme primordial weapons. Over time, she had understood more and more about the murdering godly way. In fact, she had come quite close to comprehending the ultimate killing method. Despite everything she had acquired, she still hardly came close to breaking the deduction technique. Today was a different story. Today, she had succeeded in breaking the deduction technique. Since Harold had no way of fighting against her, she had decided to return all the previous humiliation to him, thus kicking away the biggest block remaining in her heart. It had never occurred to her that she would have unknowingly unleashed a freak that she couldn't even understand herself. Right now though, she was feeling the sense of danger that Harold brought with him, even stronger than that of a few holy beings. Simultaneously, Harold kept staring at Rochelle with his mild eyes. Despite everything that was going on, his eyes were still full of warmness, which generally made people feel at ease and comfortable. Even so, a chill gushed out of Rochelle's heart. Harold said to her, "I truly apologize for what I'm about to do. Please forgive me." As soon as Harold finished speaking, he disappeared into thin air. The spatial transference of the consummate true God was very different from Zen's understanding of the grand teleportation and space traveling in the universe. It barely had any signs, nor was there the so-called space fluctuation. In other words, once the consummate true gods were on the move, their speed was faster. As soon as Harold disappeared, Rochelle rushed forward with her arms spread wide. Although she couldn't use the evolution godly way nor the deduction technique, she knew that she had to be very quick with her next step. The very moment she stretched her arms outward, she began to spin in the air, as though a bloody whirlwind or tornado was carrying her upward into the air. Crack, crack. At the same time, Harold suddenly appeared behind Rochelle. As she had expected, he was already grabbing at her with one hand. Seeing that Harold's movements were exactly what she had imagined they'd be, she felt absolutely delighted. Through the sharpness of her blood-condensing machete and her mortal dust sword, as well as through her murdering godly way and ultimate killing intent, she planned to chop Harold into bits and pieces. Despite her intentions, she had forgotten that Harold could still deduce her every move. At that very moment though, she no longer resisted Harold's deduction technique. Harold could nearly hear every word she cried out hysterically and even her counterattack. Unexpectedly, Harold's right hand pierced through the whirlwind made by Rochelle and he grabbed onto her waist. Rochelle was very thin and fragile. His hand easily encircled her entire wrist without even trying. Her size, in comparison to his, didn't matter because her reaction was quick. In the face of an extremely disadvantageous situation, she suddenly became very serene and calm. In just the blink of an eye, bloody red scales began to appear all over her body. In order to win against Harold, she had overly prepared herself. Because he was so willing to fight against her face to face, she no longer had to hide anything from him at all. The murdering godly way's most powerful characteristic was its direct attack. There were barely any true gods who were willing to fight against a true god who cultivated the murdering godly way. The sanity in Rochelle's pupils completely disappeared. Simultaneously, her cinnabar field also extended countless tentacles, consistently spreading throughout her body. Wherever the tentacles passed and grazed, her body structures changed accordingly. For anyone looking in, all they could see was Rochelle's body becoming covered in dark red scales. What kind of theurgy is this? No such a theurgy exists in the murdering godly way, someone exclaimed. Judging from the scales, she seems to have a wholly evil body, but I've never seen such a strange one ever before. She has combined at least 3 types of godly ways. I haven't expected that Rochelle is so powerful now. Her clan has really placed great hopes on her, a voice replied. For those who were watching this open battle today, they had all imagined that the same thing would repeat itself. To their surprise though, what they saw was completely different from what they had expected. Both sides displayed their unique skills and especially, those that the others had never seen before. Nellie stared at her sister in the distance, clenching her fists tightly. She didn't expect that her sister would demonstrate her ultimate skill so quickly. Nellie remembered that her father had once said this move could keep her alive for a short period of time. Within it, she would be almost invincible. Just as the idea flashed in Nellie's mind though, the scene that played out before her eyes made her change her mind. At the same time, with a colorful glow gleaming on his right arm, Harold grabbed Rochelle with his left hand and waved his right fist just inches away from her face. There was a certain drawback in using the strength source, which was that one couldn't completely integrate the strength source into their own body. Harold though, seemed to have a better understanding of the might godly way as well as the body refining skills. This was even beyond a holy being's vision. Even Rochelle's ultimate skill, which was claimed to be invincible, couldn't currently bear the might godly way. Bang! He thrust his fist forward and the punch landed on Rochelle. Dark spikes spread out around Rochelle's body. These spikes were ripples caused by the space shock, which actually spread out for dozens of miles. Crack, crack. Rochelle's body, on the other hand, had been strengthened to a terrifying state. After being punched, her body didn't disassemble in the least. Only countless cracks appeared on her skin as she began to fall downward at high speeds. As she fell down by 20 to 30 feet, Harold once again appeared just below Rochelle. Bang! With the huge space ripples spreading further and further, the second punch hit Rochelle straight on and most of the bloody red scales on her body flew off and disappeared. Boom! When Harold threw his third punch forward, the scales on Rochelle's body completely dissipated, and in front of all the onlookers, her body did the same. There were only huge black ripples that continued to spread, as if the space shocks that were created by Harold were too strong and they would now spread forever amidst this fake space. Harold raised his head and looked out at the spectators, who stood silently watching him. He didn't care about the win. On the contrary, he had more important things to do today. Chapter 1868, A Hint. Harold pondered for a moment and then said, after this re-ranking of the floating islands, the members of the Zhao clan, the Lu clan, the Qin clan, the Mu clan, the Tang clan, the Leng clan and the Dongfang clan are strictly not allowed to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain. His voice sounded very calm. However, this caused a stir among the true gods present there. What are you saying? That's impossible. Why can't we enter the Everest Spirit Mountain? Harold, are you out of your mind? Your mere words can't stop us from entering the mountain. What a joke. The true gods of all the ranks were visibly upset with Harold's decision. They were not convinced at all and believed that they had every right to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain. On the contrary, members of other clans, such as the Han clan and the Zhou clan were undeterred by this decision. They were secretly pleased instead. The Forbidden Lands meant a great deal to the powerful clans on the floating islands as they provided them with a foundation to gain a foothold. The Forbidden Lands consisted of the massive divine might coins and rare mineral resources. Over the years, the powerful clans had explored thoroughly the Forbidden Lands, and the competition was fierce among them. Their disciples would fight with each other every time the Forbidden Lands were opened. Although the safety of anyone who went there wasn't guaranteed, all the clans and the true gods went there without much hesitation. The Everest Spirit Mountain was one of the 4 great Forbidden Lands, and it wasn't as dangerous as the rest of the Forbidden Lands. The Soul Wilderness was quite mysterious and changeable as far as the 4 Forbidden Lands were concerned, and the Swirl Forest was full of fierce animals. The Abyss Demon region was the most dangerous one. There was a slim chance of survival even for the top-ranked true gods who went there. It was quite common for the consummate true gods and the demi-holy beings to die there. Therefore, the Everest Spirit Mountain was of great value and importance to all the powerful clans on the floating islands. The Zhao clan, the Lu clan, the Qin clan, the Mu clan. Zen muttered to himself. He took a mental note of all the powerful clans Harold had mentioned earlier. Murphy wasn't able to destroy the Luo clan alone. His clan was way too weak to compete with Zen's clan, so the above-mentioned clans must have worked together with Murphy in order to wipe out the Luo clan. If the members of the Han clan, the Moon clan, the Sword clan and the Gu clan wish to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain, I will take it upon myself to open the Cloud Dragon Ravine for you because. Harold said in a calm voice, as he made a strange gesture. This confused various people present there. It was no secret that Harold had a liking towards the members of the Gu clan. Mike and Bromley enjoyed a friendly relationship, so did their clans. But Harold's goodwill towards the Han clan, the Moon clan and the Sword clan was quite baffling to many. When the Luo clan was going through some difficult times, these three clans were privy to their situation. They neither offered them any help, nor did they create any more troubles for them to deal with. What does that gesture mean? It looks as if he is giving a signal. What is he suggesting? I'm not sure, but I knew he would create inconvenience for us if he took full control of the Everest Spirit Mountain. Since we can't go to the Everest Spirit Mountain, do we have to go to the Swirl Forest instead? Someone muttered. There were some other existences in this fictional world that no one else detected. In the meantime, some holy beings from the powerful clans on the floating islands had their eyes fixed upon Harold. The holy being of the Tang clan had had enough. He finally stood up and said, "The Everest Spirit Mountain doesn't belong to you, Harold. Therefore, you have no right to prevent us from entering it." This holy being was quite ill-tempered. His booming echoed in everyone's ears. His voice was enough to wake the dead. Harold directly looked at him and said, "From the moment I took control of the Everest Spirit Mountain, it belongs to me. Do you have any further questions?" Harold, the holy being of the Tang clan, lost all of his cool and said, "Even Estelle isn't as overbearing as you are." There had been two rulers of the four forbidden lands. The first one was Estelle, who had control over the Soul Wilderness. But she had disappeared for a few years before reappearing in the evolutionary universe recently. During her dominion over the Soul Wilderness, she did not set any particular rules and allowed the disciples of various powerful clans on the floating islands to come in and out freely. The entrance to the Soul Wilderness was at her disposal, so she could stop anyone from going in if she wanted. That was why she enjoyed a higher status in the eyes of the holy beings. If someone won her over, they would be able to control the Soul Wilderness. Moreover, she had the treasure scepter. The holy beings were quite wary of it. The second ruler was Harold. As soon as he took control of the Everest Spirit Mountain, he announced that he would not allow the clans that had once suppressed the Luo clan to enter. The holy beings still didn't know what kind of ability the Everest Spirit Mountain had. Thus, they were afraid that Harold might become more powerful by taking in whatever the Everest Spirit Mountain had to give. As you can see, I'm different from Estelle. You should have seen it coming a long time ago. You should have figured this out when you were bullying the Luo clan. And I have just started with my plot. Harold gave a cold smile. By the way, let this be a message to the Zhang clan to not chase me anymore. I won't be so forgiving the next time, he added. As soon as he was done speaking, he left. The blood-red arena of legends left as well, and darkness engulfed the surroundings. The true gods left one by one, and soon Zen was left all alone. That gesture was from Yan, he thought. Zen's heart was pounding out of his chest. Zen had protected his sister ever since their childhood. As he saw Harold make the gesture, he realized that it was from Yan, as if she was the one protecting him. Since Win helped Zen sneak into the ancestral land of the Han clan, Harold must have guessed that Zen had joined the Han clan. Therefore, he grabbed this opportunity to give Zen a signal. Harold had mentioned the Gu clan, the Moon clan and the Sword clan to distract people from the fact that he really wished to target the Han clan. Even though the holy beings had doubts about it, it was almost impossible for them to find Zen from these four powerful clans. The Everest Spirit Mountain and the Cloud Dragon Ravine, Zen thought, and he also disappeared. In the depths of the time sea stood the Hall of Holy Beings in the clouds. An old man with a ruddy face stood in front of the Hall of Holy Beings. His eyes were filled with anger. He was the holy being of the Tang clan, Clark Tang. Clark Tang appeared quite furious and enraged. "What are we going to do about Harold?" Clark roared. The Tang clan developed quite swiftly over the divine eras. Their rank increased from 26th to 9th. This was due to the Everest Spirit Mountain. Among the powerful clans, they knew the mountain quite well and had gathered a great deal of information about the mountain. Whenever the Everest Spirit Mountain was opened, their disciples always reaped the most. Therefore, Clark was the first holy being to lose his temper in the arena of legends. You didn't kill Harold when you had the chance. Now he has gained control over the Everest Spirit Mountain. Do you regret it now? A calm voice came. We won't compromise with Harold. Didn't you see him make that gesture? He has been saving his strength for a while now. Now he is about to make some big moves. He is also good at making plans just like Mike. He must have been fully prepared by now. I wonder which clan and person he targets. The holy beings had no clue as to what the future held. No matter what kind of trap he sets, can he really flatten the floating islands? He's just bragging and showing off his position. It isn't necessarily our loss if we give up a forbidden land. If we join hands to develop the Swirl Forest and the Abyss Demon region, there may be some unexpected surprises. Well, we can ask Dongfang about it, when he finishes his practice. There was a vast majority of unexplored forbidden lands in the Divine Land, and no one knew what was in them. Although the holy beings believed that these uncharted territories would help them, they were still quite upset over the loss of the Everest Spirit Mountain, and they knew that it was irreplaceable. That was the reason why Clark was so angry. Chapter 1869, Imprisoned. In the Mew clan's place, the door of the god-killing hall swung open with a loud bang. The guards on both sides of the gate knelt down on the ground. In the blink of an eye, Rochelle left the Mew clan's floating island like a ghost. The guards exchanged glances with each other and began discussing in low voices. Miss Mew was quite confident this time, wasn't she? But she has still been defeated by Harold. Alas, things will not be good for her in the following days. Everyone should be so careful from now on. They all knew that Rochelle had a bad temper. After leaving the floating island, Rochelle stepped on the transparent disc and floated up into the air. Flying was forbidden in the Time Sea, and all warriors were banned from using the spatial transference. Even if she reached the consummation of True God Realm, she could not break this rule. As she traveled through the thick fog, a dark mountain came into view in front of her. The mountain was 100,000 feet high and it was very steep. Halfway up the mountain stood a huge slate which represented the highest rule of the Divine Land. It was the ruling slate. The slate connected the entire mountain with lightning that seemed ordinary but contained strong power that even holy beings could not resist. Under normal circumstances, no one could climb the mountain or approach the slate. Rochelle didn't travel toward the top of the mountain. After looking up at the slate, she moved to the back of the mountain and entered a huge cave. In the cave, a figure in a silver robe was bound by the lightning and could not move at all. It was none other than Murphy, who had broken the rules of the slate. After he had attacked the evolutionary universe, the ruling slate had trapped Murphy in the cave as punishment. "Father," Rochelle shouted, "you've lost," Murphy asked indifferently. He knew his daughter's character very well. Judging from the subtle difference in her voice, he could tell that Rochelle had been defeated. Yes, Rochelle nodded, showing a little grievance on her face. But that grievance disappeared in an instant. She already had a cultivation at the consummation of True God Realm and was the hope of the Mew clan. She could not let herself display any negative emotions in front of others, not even her own father. "I guess Harold has made some progress on his strength again," Murphy said. Then, he shook his head and added, "He has indeed benefited a lot from the Everest Spirit Mountain." Recalling the strength that Harold had shown, Rochelle felt a chill run down her spine. However, it was no longer important. "Father, Harold has taken complete control of the Everest Spirit Mountain. He announced in the Arena of Legends that the Mew clan can never step into the Everest Spirit Mountain again." "What?" Murphy shouted in shock. He knew better than anyone how much the Mew clan would be affected if the Everest Spirit Mountain was closed off to it. Is the Mew clan the only clan that isn't allowed to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain? He asked, holding his breath in apprehension. "No, the Tang clan and the Dongfang clan are also not allowed to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain," Rochelle replied. "Humph, that brat is so despicable," Murphy said coldly, but he felt a little better after knowing that the Mew clan was not alone in its predicament. And he also said that he would allow the Han clan, the Jiyu clan, the Moon clan, and the Sword clan to enter the Cloud Dragon Ravine. "I think there should be some hint," Rochelle continued. In his battle against Mike, Murphy had tried his best to win and had even personally conducted the war in the universe. He knew a lot about Mike and many other things, so Rochelle informed him about all the details. "The Jiyu clan, the Moon clan, and the Sword clan," Murphy murmured, lost in thought. Rochelle stood in silence as well as she pondered about how unacceptable it was that she had lost to a guy 16 times in a row. Seeing Harold become more and more powerful, she guessed that her father might have made a mistake in the past. A long time ago, Murphy had destroyed the Luo clan, but he had spared Harold, who had posed a threat to the Mew clan since then. Rochelle knew that she had no right to judge her father's actions, and yet, she couldn't help feeling bitter about it. Harold's words were said to the warrior who has sneaked into the divine land, Murphy said flatly. The warrior who has sneaked into the divine land. Rochelle raised her eyebrows slightly, and her eyes suddenly flashed. Yes, he probably said those words to give a hint to one of the two warriors who sneaked into the divine land some time ago, Murphy explained. In fact, Murphy had started the war in the universe, knowing about the 10 godly geniuses. He didn't know exactly what Mike was going to do, but he roughly knew that Mike was pinning his hope on these secondary creatures. Murphy had once been extremely confused about this. Previously, he had thought that Mike had tried his best to train those godly geniuses just in order to deal with the war in the universe, and that the affairs in the divine land had been handed over to Harold. Only a while later had he realized that Mike had not attached the greatest importance to what his disciples did. Of course, Murphy found this illogical. No matter how powerful the secondary creatures in the universe were, it was a joke for Mike to pin all his hopes on them. Anyway, the fact that Harold controlled the Everest Spirit Mountain now left Murphy feeling bewildered. However, Mike's plans and arrangements had always been enigmatic, and Murphy had never underestimated these godly geniuses. Therefore, he had asked his people to investigate into the matter after hearing that Harold had made the Guiders from the Zhang clan withdraw from the universes and that the 833th rule on the ruling slate had been triggered. The warriors who had sneaked into the divine land must be godly geniuses from the evolutionary universe. That was the only explanation that made sense. In the end, the Mu clan hadn't found out any clues about the event, and Murphy hadn't paid much attention to it. After all, in his eyes, a proving godly warrior wasn't worth being taken very seriously. The Gu clan has a very close relationship with the Luo clan. It's normal for Harold to mention the Gu clan and allow it to enter the Cloud Dragon Ravine. But I don't think there would be any godly geniuses hiding among the Gu clan. It is too conspicuous, Murphy said, analyzing the situation. Then, he continued, the Moon clan doesn't have a close relationship with Mike, so it's not likely that any godly geniuses would stay there. The Sword clan and the Moon clan are the same. Harold has just mentioned these two powerful clans in order to confuse the public. As a matter of fact, Murphy knew more about this matter than other holy beings. Although he didn't have much information about it, he could still discern the essence of the situation. The Han clan, Murphy murmured. I remember that Joy once cultivated in the evolutionary universe. Even after becoming a demi-holy being, she still thinks of Mike all the time. Father, are you saying that Harold said those words just to give a hint to someone in the Han clan? Who could Harold have been speaking to? Rochelle asked in shock. Murphy shook his head. Since I haven't cultivated the evolution godly way, I can't figure that out. As he thought about the godly geniuses in the evolutionary universe, he hesitated a little. It was possible that Mike had trained those godly geniuses just to mislead him. After all, Mike's plans had never been straightforward or easy to see through. Anyway, the first thing we should do is to investigate it. Arrange people to observe the Everest Spirit Mountain, Murphy commanded. But we're not allowed to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain anymore, Rochelle reminded. We can hire the true gods from other rich clans on the floating islands to do that, Murphy suggested. Rochelle nodded in agreement. Harold hadn't banned all the rich clans from entering the Everest Spirit Mountain, and there were always warriors who would take risks in order to get more divine might coins. Compared to the floating islands of other clans, the Gu clan's floating island, which was ranked 8th, was a bit smaller. There were only a few thousand people in total on the Gu clan's floating island. Among the 36 floating islands, the Gu clans had the smallest population. Bromley did not like to accept disciples, and the Gu clan did not have many descendants. On top of that, outsiders were not allowed to enter the Gu clan's floating island. With all these limitations, there was barely any growth in the number of people living here. After watching the fight between Harold and Rochelle, Augustus left the Jade Wall of Legends. He traveled through the clouds and the mist, and then jumped into a unique courtyard and spoke to his senior fellow disciple. Hey, did you watch the open battle between Harold and Rochelle? There was a boy in the courtyard carrying an emerald green fishing rod. Under the ray of light that hit the water from the rod, there was a blue fish biting on the bait. The boy was not fishing, instead, he was feeding the fish. However, Augustus's roar startled the fish, and it hurriedly swam away. Yes, I did, the boy replied impatiently as he glared at Augustus and threw the fishing rod aside. Harold has become more powerful again, and also very domineering. He seems completely different from what he used to be. Augustus sighed. The boy glanced at him but did not say anything. Harold's quick progress was indeed beyond his expectations. Since the boy stayed silent, Augustus continued, do you think that he was hinting for us to enter the Cloud Dragon Ravine when he spoke at the Arena of Legends? I think that he can't pass through the Cloud Dragon Ravine on his own, so he wants us to help him. Don't you think so? At this thought, Augustus giggled. Dream on, the boy said coldly. He then looked at the pool in front of him and said, it's about to begin. What is going to begin? Augustus asked in confusion upon hearing his senior fellow disciple's strange words. Harold's words might have been a hint to our junior fellow disciple. The boy narrowed his eyes. We're also going to take action. We can't fall behind Harold. Chapter 1870. 195 Challengers. Hearing the boy's words, Augustus was quite confused. What do you mean? Has Zen already ascended to the divine land? And is he currently on one of the floating islands? He asked in confusion. The boy threw a sharp look at Augustus. If Zen had ascended to the divine land, then his ascension must have been guided by a member of the Zhang clan. Do you think those holy beings would let him go? Why do you think Harold has been giving so much trouble to the Zhang clan in the recent times? He asked, his voice rising. Oh yes. Augustus patted his forehead. Although he was much more talented than his senior fellow disciple in terms of cultivation, he was quite slow as far as analyzing a situation was concerned. Augustus then said, so he entered the divine land in an illegal way. Since Zen is on one of the floating islands now, how about we bring him here? I will train him personally, and he is sure to make a rapid progress. Augustus, can you really find him? Do you really think that he is as careless as you are? Let's just say that you found him, then what? Do you think that you can keep him safe on the GU clan's floating island? The boy said impatiently, his tone indicated that he perceived Augustus as an ignorant person. Bormley had been roaming the boundless chaos for countless years without coming back. If Zen entered the GU clan's floating island and the holy beings wanted to take him away, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Although Zen knew that he was quite close to his two senior fellow disciples, Augustus and Hallett, he had no intentions of going to the GU clan's floating island. The boy named Hallett carried the fishing rod on his shoulder and whistled. At this, the big cyan bull, which had been crawling on the side of the pond, slowly stood up and walked toward him. Hallett then jumped on the bull's back. Take all the craps you've made and let's go from here, he shouted. Augustus was still pondering whether he should go find Zen or not. When he saw Hallett jumping on the bull, he asked, where are we going? To the right place, Hallett said solemnly. Zen, on the other hand, saw Joy smiling at him when he got out of the Jade Wall of Legends. Joy also knew what Harold meant with his words. How are you feeling now, Zen? Joy asked. She wore a pretty smile which made her look quite attractive. To be honest, I don't feel anything, Zen said dully. Although he was a bit excited, he felt a bit depressed as well. He knew that his father's plan was working wonders as soon as he entered the divine land. He knew that he was indeed the most important person, around whom the whole plan was built. But the fact that he didn't know much about his father's plan saddened him. Well, I didn't expect Harold to say something like this. I'm afraid we have no choice but to change our initial plan, Joy said with a sigh. According to her plan, Zen was expected to win consecutive victories in the Arena of Legends in order to earn a great deal of points for the Purple Soul Hall. This could help the Han clan raise the ranking of its floating island. And with Zen's current strength and progress, it was very likely that he could accomplish this feat. However, Harold gave a signal in his open battle against Rochelle and mentioned the Han clan. Although he also mentioned 3 other powerful clans, people were very likely to guess that Zen was the anonymous man if he won a great deal of points. But I am in an anonymous state, how on earth will they find out who I really am? Zen asked with a curious expression on his face. Up until now, no one in the Hall of True Gods really found out his identity. Thus, he thought that he would be safe regardless. Joy gave a look at the Jade Wall of Legends on which the warriors' rankings kept changing. When the points are being calculated, your points will go to Han clan. Thus, they'd figure out who you really are, she explained. Oh, then what are we supposed to do? Zen asked, his voice deep with concern. Here is an idea, Joy said. In the last match you can lose to Laquisha. Zen thought for a moment. It was indeed a radical solution to transfer a great deal of points to Laquisha. But I need the points to get the treasure that is rewarded by the Han clan, he said. What treasure do you wish to acquire? Joy asked with a smile. She thought of Zen as a stubborn fellow. She knew that he wouldn't ask her for help even if he needed it desperately. It was quite true that Zen didn't like asking for help, no matter how dire the circumstances were. He had no plans of asking Joy for help. I want the golden beast statue. After I accumulate enough points, I'm going to. Joy interrupted Zen midway through his speech and said, hold on. She gave her waist a sudden twist and disappeared. A few seconds later she reappeared, making her way towards Zen. She had something in her hands. Clang, she threw the mysterious object in her hands on the ground. The golden beast statue lay right in front of Zen. He looked at the statue with astonishment. It was as big as a fully grown human being. He didn't expect Joy to fetch the statue just for him. Zen examined the golden beast statue. He had an intense awareness in his inner world again. The target of the consciousness of his inner world was the mud at the bottom of the golden beast statue. The golden beast statue is a real gem. Its full body was made from a special material, and it can transform into the shapes of thousands of beasts. After refining it, the user can skillfully resist the low-rank true gods with it. But to you, I believe it isn't of much use as you can already defeat most of the low-rank true gods easily. Therefore, I was wondering what use it is to you. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. Well, I just have a liking for it, Zen said. Joy nodded but didn't quite believe Zen. He must have known something about the golden beast statue, but since he didn't want to discuss it, she didn't pursue the subject. Zen smiled triumphantly as she left. The mud tray at the bottom of the golden beast statue was of great importance to him. Zen knew that he had to prove his godly way before he went to the Everest Spirit Mountain. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to enter the Cloud Dragon Ravine. The mud at the bottom of the golden beast statue was present in great amount, but he was not sure whether it was enough for him to smoothly condense his godly tile. Zen gave the golden beast statue one last glance and finally put it away. He knew that he still had to fight against the low-rank true gods. If he made a breakthrough in his cultivation base and became a low-rank true god himself, he wouldn't be able to earn a great deal of points by fighting other low-rank true gods. Therefore, he decided to absorb the mud after the rankings of the floating islands were determined. He had 13 days before the rankings of the floating islands were to be decided. This led to an increase in the number of open battles in the arena of legends. The warriors who were fighting in the open battles were the consummate true gods in the divine land. Their strength was second to that of the holy beings and the demi-holy beings on the various floating islands. The disciples of the wealthy clans on the floating islands were quite keen on watching the open battles, and the arena was jam-packed with spectators every time an open battle took place. Walton from the Tang clan was successful in defeating Quora of the Zhou clan. Shan from the Fang clan completely wiped out Melissa from the Li clan. Zen was also quite keen on witnessing these open battles of the consummate true gods. He had not missed a single battle till date. He knew that the big clans didn't always get along with each other, and now he had a general understanding of the grudges among those wealthy clans. The wealthy clans on the floating islands were divided into 3 factions. One of the 3 factions was made up of several powerful clans which were responsible for the destruction of the Luo clan. These clans were led by the Dongfang clan. Another faction consisted of clans which were neutral, like the Han clan and the Li clan. These clans were quite independent and didn't form an alliance with other powerful clans. However, Han clan seemed to have allied with Leng clan recently, and the engagement between Laquisha and Langston confirmed the news. Yet to everyone's disbelief, Laquisha and Langston fell out with each other. As for the Moon clan and the Sword clan, they were 2 powerful clans who were ranked 2nd and 3rd respectively. The warriors on these 2 floating islands came from the 4 divine trees. The divine land had 4 angles. There were 4 trees of great importance that stood at the 4 angles that supported the divine land. With the help of Sunset Tree, Ray Tree, Lofty Tree and Hidden Tree, many powerful warriors were born in the areas around these 4 divine trees. There were rumors that before the appearance of the Time Sea, the 4 great divine trees played host to strong warriors. As the ruling slate appeared, the strong warriors came to know the importance of rules. Thus, they established their own floating islands above the Time Sea, attracting warriors from all the directions in the divine land. This was how the Time Sea became the heart of the divine land. Much to everyone's surprise, the 2 consummate true gods from the Gu clan refrained from participating in the open battles this time. It was a fact that whenever the rankings of the floating islands were to be decided, the efforts of the Gu clan's 2 consummate true gods were quite commendable. The Gu clan's floating island didn't have many disciples, due to which the Gu clan's points were expected to be quite less than that of the rest of the powerful clans. However, Halit's and Augustus' efforts were enough to rank the Gu clan's floating island 8th in the Time Sea. People said that if Augustus and Halit were on the floating island of some other wealthy clan, that clan would have been in the top 3. However, Halit and Augustus were nowhere to be seen this year. and the ranking of the GU clan was at risk of falling out of the top 10, if they decided not to fight in the Arena of Legends. 3 days remained before the rankings of the floating islands were to be decided. Zen finally entered the Jade Wall of Legends. While in his own room, he noticed that there were 195 low-rank true gods that had challenged him to battle. According to the rules of the Hall of True Gods, only the warriors who were ranked 1 to 100 places higher or lower than Zen could challenge him. Zen was ranked 96th and only 95 warriors were ranked higher than him, and 195 low-rank true gods had offered to fight with him, which meant that everyone who was eligible to challenge Zen did so. Chapter 1871, The Parting Water. When he noticed the scene on the wall, Zen fell speechless. In other words, he no longer had the need to find an opponent at random. All he needed to do was accept any true god's challenge. He could have his pick among the 195 warriors. How weak do I really look if everyone wants to challenge me? Zen touched his nose shyly and forced a smile. On the contrary though, the 195 people who had challenged him didn't actually think Zen was weak at all. The Hall of True Gods had a very reasonable system, in fact. Through constantly adjusting the warriors' rankings, the system could accurately show a true god's genuine strength. Of course, Zen's situation was completely different. From the very first day he entered the Jade Wall of Legends, never had he been defeated. No one knew his true ranking, and there was no record of this anonymous man in the Jade Wall of Legends. He was currently ranked 96th, according to his room's position. Since I can simply choose my own opponent, I better choose the weakest one. Zen reached out his hand and his finger grazed the names on the wall. These names were all inscribed neatly in front of him. Finally, his finger came to a stop on someone's name, someone who ranked 196th. This warrior was named Yilia Fang. The strength gap between any two warriors among the top 200 wasn't very large. In order to benefit from the most possible consecutive wins, Zen would naturally choose the weakest opponent. What he wasn't really aware of though, was that his opponent wouldn't really be weak. In the Hall of True Gods, the competition that would decide the floating islands' rankings had reached its peak intensity. A few of the wealthy clans on the floating islands had estimated that their points would be beneficial to them, and they thus convinced many of their disciples to avoid accepting challenges so as to prevent being defeated and losing their points. Other wealthy clans thought that their rankings would ultimately be lowered, so they naturally forced their disciples to fight in the Hall of True Gods in order to gain more points. The Fang clan's floating island ranked 6th in the Time Sea, but it had great ambition. The top 3 powerful clans, the Dongfang clan, the Sword clan, and the Moon clan, had unshakable positions, and the Fang clan was unable to deal with them. Yet, with an immense effort from the Fang clan, they had respectable chances of defeating the Leng clan. For this reason, the Fang clan's true gods were currently very active in the Hall of True Gods. Today, Yilia Fang was also looking for her opponents in the Hall of True Gods. She had already won 4 consecutive wins herself, rising from the 247th ranking to the 196th. Following such a success, she immediately launched a challenge to the anonymous man. The anonymous man carried such an incredible number of points. If the anonymous man accepted her challenge and she won against him, she would equally gain a huge amount of points. Furthermore, her contribution would be nearly the same as that of the Fang clan's consummate true gods. Everyone's greatest desire was to gain this honor, as well as the highest clan reward. On the other hand, losing against this man wouldn't affect her at all, aside from perhaps dozens of points. That said though, she also knew that the chances of this anonymous man choosing her were rather slim. To her absolute surprise, after she had sent him the challenge just that morning, the anonymous man accepted her challenge no more than 4 hours later. Upon seeing the light on the wall, she felt slightly stunned, and then a look of surprise and joy washed over her face. Although it felt much longer, only a few seconds passed. She entered the Arena of Legends with confidence. As the environment around him changed, Zen too quietly entered the Arena of Legends. As he entered, his view was filled with a world covered in mist and rain, surrounded by countless pavilions and towers, everything completely drenched by the showers. As he breathed in gently, the unique fragrance of the rain immediately took over his senses. This world isn't half bad after all, Zen said after taking a quick look around. He knew that they could change the environment in the Arena of Legends, and a few wealthy clan members would choose environments that suited them. In Zen's opinion, besides the pleasant atmosphere, there was no other use to this world full of mist and rain. Not long after, Yilia Fang appeared opposite to Zen. When she saw the anonymous man standing before her, she grinned. "Wow, I'm so lucky. Why did you accept my challenge? While this woman had a gentle appearance, she wore a pitiful look on her face. To her question, Zen replied faintly, because you rank the lowest among the warriors who challenged me. Yilia Fang smiled anew and immediately shook her head. Then I'm afraid you've picked the wrong opponent. And what exactly do you mean by that? Zen asked in confusion. Suddenly, Yilia Fang stretched out her hand slightly, and a clear raindrop fell onto it. The drop shook slightly, as if it had the power of life. It began attracting the raindrops around her, and suddenly, the single drop turned into a short transparent watercolored sword. She gently waved her forefingers and thumb, and the sword floated upward, aiming itself directly at Zen. It began to spin on itself continuously. As he watched the sword, the woman said, "The anonymous man is best at pure strength. His soul is also very strong. In addition, he has understood the complete ice soul flame, which is an inheritance from Holy J. This is all I know about you. With this alone, you are no match for me." Zen raised his eyebrows and his expression displayed nothing but surprise. The only person knew that he used the ice soul flame was the fat man, More Moon. "Did More Moon tell you that, by any chance?" he asked. Now, it was Yilia Fang's turn to look and feel surprised. Her beautiful eyes opened wide. "You don't know, how pathetic. That fat man hid this news very well at first, but before long, he was using it to earn himself money." More Moon was a mighty warrior ranked 20th, yet he had lost to Zen, otherwise known as the Anonymous Man. The Anonymous Man had accumulated a large number of points, and naturally attracted people's attention. The seniors of wealthy clans were equally willing to obtain more information about the Anonymous Man. At first, More Moon didn't want to reveal such, but he eventually gave in to the temptation of divine might coins. In the hands of every one of the top 200 low-ranked true gods was a piece of information about Zen. What was more, they had even analyzed Zen's strength and weaknesses. "Wow, he really knows how to make money," Zen said, shaking his head from side to side. "If what More Moon was saying is true, then I'll be very honored and more than pleased to end your winning streak," Yilia Fang said, gently waving her hand upward this time. Thousands of raindrops began to gather as one. Countless watercolored short swords appeared within a 1,000 feet radius, with Zen as the center. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Those swords flew like a torrential rain toward Zen, all at once and coming from all directions. "Even if the water in the divine land is much heavier than that in the universe, do you really think it can hurt me?" Zen thought in his mind, as a strange expression contorted his features. Dense swords rushed toward him in epically straight lines, and there was nearly no way or time to dodge them. Zen didn't even attempt to move in the least, but let the swords hit him instead. Puff, 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 puff. Zen wasn't afraid, not at all. He knew that these water swords were barely harmful and rather powerless. They couldn't even cause him any harm. However, the tender smile on Yilia Fang's face remained, seemingly as calm as ever. "What?" he asked abruptly. Before long, Zen too noticed something was completely off. When these swords hit his body, they immediately turned into rain water. However, the rain didn't flow down onto the ground. Instead, it was actually glued to his body. Realizing how strange this was, Zen shook his body lightly in an attempt to get the water off him. However, the rain stuck to his body like paste, and no matter how hard he shook, he failed to make it come off. "This water is very strange," Zen murmured, frowning slightly. He had a feeling that something bad was about to happen, and took action without a second's more delay. When Zen faced More Moon, Zen had almost lost to him. These talents from wealthy clans all had very special tricks up their sleeves. Upon remembering this, Zen suddenly flashed and rushed toward Yilia Fang. "You didn't notice anything wrong until now. It's too late." Yilia Fang stood on tiptoe, and her body quickly slid backward. On a street full of rain, she continued retreating, bringing up bursts of water flowers with every step. The water splashed out as it equally turned into a short sword, shooting toward Zen. Zen didn't go too far. More and more rain clung to his body, weighing him down. He couldn't get rid of the thick layer of water. It was even blocking Zen's speed now. How could he catch up with Yilia Fang with so much water slowing him down? "Burn it out." Zen frowned and a flame emitted itself from his body. The blazing, orange flame was immediately extinguished the second it shot out. The parting water can conquer all kinds of fire, not to mention that your flame hasn't even fully developed yet. Yilia Fang shook her head. "I may as well tell you that you can't break out from the parting water's grasp with your strength alone. I'm curious to discover what else you have to resist me with." As she spoke, the rain water that was hitting Zen's body formed a water ball of at least 10 feet in height, tightly wrapping itself around him. The parting water was 1,000 times heavier than ordinary rain water. Zen simply couldn't exert his strength beneath such dead weight. He had no choice but to accept the fact that he was indeed trapped. Chapter 1872, Buddha Emperor Sword. Standing not too far away was Yulia, looking at Zen mischievously. Countless raindrops were gathering in the space. They transformed into short swords and shot towards Zen, making the water ball surrounding him grow bigger and bigger. For a while, she looked Zen up and down before suddenly lowering her head and saying, "Come to think of it, it's meaningless for me to defeat you." Her voice seemed obscure over the thick layer of water. Zen was puzzled, wondering what she really meant. She walked toward the water ball slowly and tapped its surface with her finger, triggering a small whirlpool to appear on its surface. It continued spinning until it formed a fist-sized hollow passageway, directly penetrating to Zen's head. She had brilliantly mastered the control of water. The divine land is rather boring. It's not easy to find a warrior who has won 22 consecutive times. It's quite a pity that you will lose to me, said Yulia as she smiled at the passageway. Are you sure you can defeat me? Zen asked in return. Though he couldn't speak in the water, because his head was in the passageway, he could still make a sound. In spite of him being restrained by the water, it was impossible for her to use it to kill him. She's not going to drown me, is she? With a confident smile, she replied, since I managed to trap you, naturally, I have the ability to kill you as well. So tell me, do you want to defeat me? What's the point? So what if I say I want to defeat you? Zen asked. Well then tell me your real identity and which clan you come from, will you? With her hands clasped behind her back, she continued with a smile, if you can tell me the truth, it won't be impossible for me to admit defeat. Hearing this, Zen put on a strange expression. What were those disciples from the divine land thinking about all day? This Yulia seemed completely normal. Why would she make such a strange request? Don't you care about the points? Zen asked again. Points? Of course I care, she smiled. If I defeat you, I'll get a lot of points. Even my brother will think highly of me. But what's the use? There's no point in moving our floating island one place up. Yulia's brother, Shan Fang, was the one who won 2 consecutive victories in the open battles. This time, the Fang clan had risen rapidly. It had been estimated that the Fang clan, ranked 6th in the past, might reach the 5th or 4th place this time. Think about this carefully. An anonymous man appeared out of nowhere. I think it will be more interesting to let you remain undefeated. Yulia's face was filled with loneliness as she said, this divine land is so boring. The highest level of creatures, pursuit was the eternity. From the mortals in the universes to the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm, and to the supreme lords, they all pursued a longer lifespan to get rid of the control of time. But whether it was the Supreme Lord who had a lifespan of over 100 million years or the mortal who had a lifespan of about 60 to 70 years, none of them could resist time, which would kill them all one day. Time was people's greatest enemy. But everything was different in the divine land. The divine citizens' lifespans were by no means short. Once they proved a godly way, their lives were to be sublimated from finite to infinite, and they would complete the ultimate pursuit of all living beings. But many creatures lost their targets after this pursuit was fulfilled. Because Zen had traveled from the vast sky region to the floating island in a very short period of time, he hadn't seen the negative side of the divine land. In fact, there was a portion of the true gods in the divine land who quickly sank into depression. They could make their own worlds and experience a variety of things in their own worlds, and everything could be easily possessed. One divine era passed as such, just as the next divine eras did, the next 100 did, the next 1000, and the next 10,000. Time was meaningless to the true gods. Only then did some of them realize that it was not such a wonderful thing to have an eternal life. Many true gods even ended their lives after quietly expending 2 or 3 divine eras. Of course, more true gods were still climbing to the peak of the godly ways, hoping to reach the consummation of true god realm. Once they became holy beings, they would build floating islands, and supported their clans above the time sea. As for the disciples born in the wealthy clans like Yulia, she had a brother who loved her very much. In her eyes, the countless divine eras and the invariable divine land were too boring, so she was much more interested in anything that could surprise her. And the anonymous man in front of her with 22 consecutive wins was very interesting. It was truly exciting when he challenged her. Though she was well prepared as she intended to take points from him, she had changed her mind. Sorry, I can't tell you, Zen said as he shook his head. It was normal for others to have some strange ideas, but Zen had no reason nor time to play with them. Disappointment appeared on Yulia's face, but she still said, "I promise I won't tell anyone else." Zen interrupted her, "No, it's impossible. It was a matter of life and death." How could Zen believe a stranger's guarantee, even though he thought Yulia was likely to be a faithful kind of person? "Then I'm left with no choice but to kill you," Yulia threatened as she raised her brows. Seeing her serious expression, Zen laughed and slowly raised his hand. Pointing his palm at Yulia, he said, "You seem to have made a mistake. Do you really think you can defeat me by trapping me in water?" "According to what Moore said, I think I can," Yulia returned carefully. "What an innocent girl," Zen sighed. Having grown up in the best possible environment, these disciples on the floating islands seldom fell into the jungle of deception. When they could rely on their own real strength to suppress their opponents, such tricks of deception were truly useless to them. As soon as his voice fell, an invisible force appeared before Zen's palm. It made the water disperse quickly as the sword slowly condensed. But Yulia didn't take it too seriously. She merely thought that Zen had just taken out an ordinary magic weapon and sighed, "Well then, I can only do it now." Yulia suddenly waved her hand and the huge water ball wrapped with Zen twisted. Black water drops were constantly formed on the surface of the huge water ball until they turned into 4 dark turbid currents, slowly surging in the water ball, like 4 rapidly wriggling poisonous worms crawling toward Zen. The 5 elements godly way contained the 5 most common laws. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth all had their own godly ways, such as the elementary fire godly way, and the parting water godly way that Yulia cultivated. In the eyes of many true gods outside of the time sea, the parting water godly way wasn't particularly powerful. At the very least, it was good for assisting others, and its own power was considered to be inferior. In fact, when one reached a certain level of the parting water godly way, they could cultivate several powerful theurgies. For instance, the devouring spirit turbid current Yulia displayed now. It worked well in the face of extremely solid things. The stronger Zen's body was, the greater the power of the devouring spirit turbid current would be. Noticing that 4 black turbid currents were slowly moving towards him, Zen also felt a sense of danger. In a moment, traces of the internal momentum of the emotion-closing godly way popped into his mind. After constant trials, Zen became quite proficient in activating the infinity ruler by the internal momentum of the emotion-closing godly way and removing all the internal momentum the next second. Buzz. Then, 2 golden rings appeared in his eyes. If the parting water godly way is cultivated to the extreme, it will be truly powerful. The devouring spirit turbid current is actually a type of corrosive water. Even the supreme primordial weapon will melt. When Zen's eyes instantly saw through the internal momentum within the godly way, he was left to unscramble it in his mind. Noticing devouring spirit turbid current's remarkable power, Zen didn't hesitate at all. The 9 divine stars within his inner world began revolving rapidly until an invisible force gushed out. The sword handle seemed to be a Maitreya Buddha with the sword's middle part as wide as a wheel. It was the Buddha Emperor sword. The killing sword in the god's killing sword array. It didn't take Zen 4 swords to kill Yulia. So now, Zen took out this one sword. Whoosh! Since Zen controlled only one single sword, he didn't need to activate the purple or a godly way. As soon as he made a thought, the Buddha Emperor sword broke through the water rapidly and shot toward Yulia. The Buddha Emperor sword was created by power shaping, and the parting water caused it no hindrance at all. This sword. At this moment, Yulia's eyes were filled with surprise. Parting water divine mirror. Realizing that things weren't going well, Yulia clapped her hands, creating a piece of water mirror. The parting water divine mirror was also a powerful theurgy. The parting water could transform into anything, and the parting water divine mirror could clone anything reflected onto it rapidly and shoot it back. Whoosh! An identical Buddha Emperor sword shot out from the parting water divine mirror. Crack! 2 Buddha Emperor swords collided in the air, both falling apart in an instant. But Yulia's power was limited after all. It was impossible for the parting water divine mirror to perfectly copy the theurgy of her opponent. After the sword dissipated, it disappeared while Zen's Buddha Emperor sword once again took shape. With a clang, the Buddha Emperor sword was smashed into Yulia's mirror. It was already pressed against her white neck and then it pierced right into her. Blood slowly flowed along the invisible sword, converging on the wheel in the middle of the sword, forming the word, kill. Chapter 1873, Triumph. The real Buddha Emperor sword had blood grooves on the body, and the word, kill, was carved in the wheel. After the opponent was killed, the blood would flow along the blood grooves and fuse with the word, kill. With the divine textures around, more malicious aura would be condensed. As per Joy's strict instructions, Zen restored all the details of the Buddha Emperor sword, including the word, kill, which was floating in the air. Yulia stared at the sword in front of her with surprise. In fact, Zen had used the cross-world thurji before, but no one had recognized it. After all, no one could even imagine that a proving godly warrior could use the skill of a holy being. Besides, back then, Zen had used the most basic skill of the thurji without having a deep understanding of power shaping. This is the power shaping of the might godly way. Yulia stared incredulously at the Buddha Emperor sword. The power was invisible, so she could only see a vague outline of the sword. And yet, at the same time, she could see her blood flowing slowly along the blood grooves, forming the word, kill. This is not right at all, she exclaimed. Then, she added in a low voice, the power can't be separated from your body. And even if it can, once it's broken by my parting water divine mirror, it should be completely impossible for you to shape anything again. How did you do that? The passageway that Yulia had opened just now had disappeared, leaving Zen completely submerged in water and unable to speak. When he heard her words of surprise, he just shrugged his shoulders and, with a light flick of his index finger, sent the Buddha Emperor sword flying forward until it pierced through Yulia's head. Splash! Yulia was instantly killed on contact. The parting water enveloping Zen disintegrated and gushed out around him like a torrent. It was a spectacular scene to watch. However, the parting water did not completely dissipate. A scale on the infinity ruler in Zen's mind had already lit up faintly. He slightly raised his hand, causing some of the parting water to turn into crystal water swords and float up. If Yulia had seen this, she would have been even more shocked. The parting water godly way can only be employed in a place with water. That's why Yulia chose such a foggy environment. If I'm not around water, I guess I'll have to find another way to employ this godly way. Otherwise, the thurji of the parting water godly way might be greatly weakened. Splash! With a slight shake of Zen's finger, one of the glittering and translucent water swords turned black. It was the devouring spirit turbid current of the parting water godly way. As Zen gently moved his finger, the black water sword shot toward him and immediately corroded his arm. As I expected, this devouring spirit turbid current can restrain all kinds of magic weapons, and it also has an effect on my physical body. No wonder she was so confident earlier. However, this thurji doesn't mean much to me. On the other hand, the parting water divine mirror that she used just now could copy my attack and it was almost as powerful as the original. Continuing to experiment with his newfound knowledge, Zen reached out his hand and patted the air gently, turning the parting water into a mirror. The parting water divine mirror in front of him was not as good as the one that Yulia had employed. However, he was amazed to know that the thurji could copy his Buddha Emperor sword. If he could cultivate the parting water divine mirror to the top level, he would be able to effectively copy the attack of any opponent. This was indeed an extraordinary method to use in any battle. While Zen was pondering over this method, the space surrounding him slowly receded along with the parting water divine mirror. Zen found himself back in his room. He had no idea that the parting water divine mirror was a secret of the Fang clan. In fact, until now, Yulia and Shan were the only ones who had inherited it. Zen had managed to easily break the parting water divine mirror mainly because of a coincidence. The Buddha Emperor sword was very special because it could only be condensed by pure strength. After divorcing from one's body, the Buddha Emperor sword could retain its shape by using the cross-world thurji to provide the strength source continuously. If Zen had used any another thurji, Yulia could have controlled the sword easily as long as she infused her own momentum. But since it was impossible for her to have the cross-world thurji, she had been unable to restore the collapsed duplication of the Buddha Emperor sword. Although Yulia had ranked just 196th in the arena of legends, she had already thoroughly studied Zen, which had taken Zen by great surprise. It was not easy for Zen to cope with the following battles. After all, many people were paying close attention to him now. Just as Yulia had said, almost everyone had bought information about Zen from Moore, so they were studying his skills as well as his strengths and weaknesses, and fighting him with corresponding methods and strategies. After defeating Yulia, Zen obtained some points for his victory as well as an extra reward for his consecutive win. Now, he had accumulated 460,000 points in total. The anonymous man won again. He has defeated Yulia. He has moved up 20 places, but my rank is only 182nd. Thus, I have no chance to challenge him. Alas. According to the rules of the Arena of Legends, only warriors who were within 100 places before and behind Zen had the qualifications to challenge him. Now that Zen's room had moved up 20 places, 20 people had lost the qualification to challenge him. Standing on a higher place, Nellie stared down at the anonymous man's room, her round eyes displaying a faint killing intent. Now that her sister had been defeated by Harold, there was even more pressure surmounting on the Mew clan. The clans on the floating islands usually had more than one consummate true god. However, perhaps influenced by Rochelle's failure, the other consummate true gods had also been defeated. This came as a great blow to the Mew clan. Currently, the Mew clan's floating island ranked 7th. But if things continued to progress this way, the Mew clan's rank would probably drop below the top 10. That anonymous man, you better remember what you said. Nellie was really afraid that the anonymous man wouldn't dare to challenge her. For the Mew clan's sake, she had to get points from him. However, if he didn't want to accept her challenge, she wouldn't be able to do anything. At the same time, LaQuisha stared at the change in the anonymous man's ranking with an indifferent expression on her face. She had an intuition that the anonymous man was none other than Zen. However, she couldn't take any action in the Hall of True Gods, so she couldn't test him. Anyway, the anonymous man had said that he would challenge her after defeating Nellie. LaQuisha was not as anxious as Nellie. She believed that the anonymous man would do what he had said. After Yulia was defeated by Zen, she quickly left the Jade Wall of Legends and returned to the floating island of the Fang clan. She didn't harbor any anger or resentment over her defeat, but her eyes were full of deep confusion. "You've come home so soon today?" a gentle voice asked. She turned to the familiar voice and faced her brother, Sean, the most powerful consummate true god of the Fang clan. "I just encountered something strange," said Yulia. Curiosity flooded Sean's eyes. Although Yulia was smart and lovely, she was too indifferent to things. There were few things that piqued her interest. In fact, she had even been unwilling to attend the astronomical transit day held by the sun-blind race. So for Yulia to have found something strange or interesting, it must have been monumental indeed. "What is it?" Sean asked. "Can someone release power outside their body after the power is shaped and transformed into an object?" Yulia asked. With a faint smile, Sean gently patted the air, and an invisible palm print shot out. The palm print was so erratic that it finally hit the wall and disappeared. It's not a difficult thing to do. Most of the true gods who focus on cultivating the might godly way can do it. Although Sean hadn't cultivated the might godly way much, he had condensed the 9 divine stars, he was just unable to put them into his inner world. Anyway, it wasn't difficult for him to hit the wall with a formidable strike like that. But unexpectedly, Yulia shook her head and said, "That's not what I mean. My opponent made use of power shaping to form a flying sword." Before she could finish speaking, Sean struck the wall again, but this time with an invisible sword which had been formed from the strength source. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "It's not difficult. Can you let me finish?" Yulia glared at Sean. Then, she continued, "After he detached the flying sword from his body, he managed to control it freely. Then, after I smashed it with my parting water divine mirror, he managed to shape it in the air again." At these words, a mixture of bewilderment and disbelief appeared on Sean's face. He shook his head immediately and said, "That's impossible. The power can't be controlled freely after being shaped into an object. It would rapidly weaken. You might not have clearly seen what happened, or he might have used another kind of theurgy. It can't be the power shaping. As for the skill you just described, only a holy being can do it with the cross-world theurgy. Even I can't do that at my present level." "Really? Well, I thought I made a mistake. But he really did it," Yulia uttered with a smile of admiration. "Who?" Sean asked with confusion. In fact, although Yulia looked serious and utterly sure about her words, Sean still doubted what she had said. Yulia's opponent was just a low-rank true god, so there was no way he could have been able to do that. "It was that anonymous man who challenged me today. And what I just described was the method he used to triumph over me," said Yulia. Chapter 1874. Passing a message. Sean had gotten wind of news about the anonymous man. Anonymity aside, it was indeed a miracle to be able to obtain 23 consecutive wins in challenging warriors at higher levels. Only a few select people had been able to do this in the history of the Arena of Legends. Even he is an anonymous man, it should be impossible for him to do what you just said. Sean stretched out one hand, and an invisible power was condensed again. Then he threw it lightly, and the power began to rapidly disappear. Power had only been a description at the beginning. But after the activation of the 8-path platforms, it was transformed into pure energy and stored. An interruption of supply would mean the depletion of someone's power, and only by the cross-world theurgy would they able to extract power from their body, keeping the power from weakening. A proving godly warrior and the cross-world theurgy. I can't believe it. Sean shook his head. Across him, Yulia looked annoyed. Have I ever lied to you? No, smiled Sean, but you are spewing nonsense. This earned him several punches from Yulia. The shape of that sword was a little odd. Its handle resembled the Maitreya Buddha while the body looked like a wheel. And after it made contact with blood, the blood formed the word kill. Kill, Sean questioned, eyebrows raised. It's the Buddha Emperor sword, the unique skill of the demi-holy being of the Han clan. Joy's God's killing sword array was famous in the Divine Land, plus, the shape of the Buddha Emperor sword was very special. It was practically a giveaway. It dawned on the siblings at the same time. The Han clan. The anonymous man came from the Purple Soul Hall, Sean said calmly. Interesting, you're finally exposed. Compared to Sean's calm reaction, Yulia was excited. After defeating Yulia, Zen immediately chose the next opponent. The top warriors in the Divine Land were all gathered in the floating islands. Whatever method he used would be spread quickly. His next opponent was Sam Zhao, who ranked 176th. Like Yulia, he'd been elated to be chosen by Zen, however, his excitement did not last very long. Zen had absorbed the 5 elements godly way which Sam also cultivated. He tried to force Sam to use the Thirji Beyond way, but Sam seemed to have cultivated the godly way step by step without inheriting any Thirji Beyond way from his clan. So when Sam thought that he had the upper hand in the battle, Zen took out the Buddha Emperor sword and killed him without hesitation. 24 consecutive wins, 610,000 points. Nearly 150,000 points would be gained when he defeated a low-rank true god, almost as many points as one would get defeating a consummate true god. It was appalling. Zen returned to his room, calm and at ease, and chose another name from the list. Go on. As Zen challenged opponent after opponent, the low-rank true gods of the Hall of True Gods gradually understood his strategy in choosing. When he was at the 96th place, he challenged Yulia who ranked 196th. Then at 76th place, he challenged Sam who ranked 176th, and at 57th, he battled the warrior who placed 157th. In short, Zen chose the lowest ranking warrior for every round. While definitely a good strategy, the low-ranked true gods who ranked higher than Zen were only disappointed as their chances of getting picked by Zen were slim to none. Meanwhile, Zen won 3 more battles and now had 27 consecutive wins. In the history of the Arena of Legends, 27 consecutive wins was the highest record a warrior made in battling higher-leveled warriors. It had been 40 divine eras since, but now, Zen was about to break that record. At the same time, in the Hall of True Gods, the spectators were slowly beginning to understand the new abilities that the anonymous man demonstrated. I'm sure it's the Buddha Emperor sword. The unique skill of the demi-holy being from the Han clan, the killing sword in the God's killing sword array. Not anyone can make the God's killing sword array extraordinary, because using the real swords can't be considered the top Thirji. Only with one's own strength to condense the illusory swords can the warrior be considered strong. But he's just a proving godly warrior, how could he do that without the cross-world Thirji? He did use the cross-world Thirji to activate the power shaping and make the illusory sword. Stop talking nonsense. How could a proving godly warrior use the Thirji which could only be used by a holy being? Zen's use of the Buddha Emperor sword had stirred up the crowd. The true gods who could make it into the top 200 were trained in the key techniques of each wealthy clan. Some of them belonged to the direct line of descent like Yulia and enjoyed high status. They had confirmed that Zen came from the Han clan. The martial artists who cultivated the purple or a godly way were not all from the Purple Soul Hall of the Han clan, but it was only Joy who mastered the God's killing sword array. Such speculation was not difficult to make. The problem was about the cross-world Thirji. In the eyes of the true gods, this incredible Thirji could only be owned by holy beings. It was impossible for it to appear in the hands of a proving godly warrior. What happened was beyond their understanding. This caused a drift within the people. Some believed it with confidence while others didn't take to it at all. As the people argued, Zen stepped forward. 28 consecutive wins. 29 consecutive wins. 30 consecutive wins. The points were now up to 1,400,000. He had already surpassed the top-ranked true gods and even some consummate true gods. Now was where the situation became slightly different. Many wealthy clans did not like this anonymous man. Zen earned a lot of points like this. It didn't matter which clan he belonged to as it would always affect the results of several ranks. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do about it. 30 consecutive wins later, Zen stood at 17th place. But this time, he strayed from his strategy and chose a random battle. To his surprise, he was matched with Quentin Chin. When Quentin entered the arena of legends, he was a bit overwhelmed. He initially ranked 21st, but after winning a battle 2 days ago, he now stood at 19th place. He was also eager to challenge the anonymous man, but from the previous choices of this anonymous man, the person in a lower place was to be picked. It never occurred to him that he'd encounter this anonymous man in a random battle. Quentin had been defeated by Zen in the past when they were in the Skyland race. In the Divine Land, however, after the disciples of the wealthy clans became low-ranked true gods, their strength would be enhanced greatly. Besides, a member of the direct line of a wealthy clan like Quentin was often able to cultivate the best theurgies beyond way. Their combat strength was naturally far more superior to that of the ordinary true gods, and with Quentin's own talent, he had easily stepped into the top 20. Zen had no interest in being in a tangle with Quentin. In the previous battles, Zen had taken the initiative to attack. If his opponent displayed the godly way or theurgy beyond way that he lacked, he would activate the Infinity Ruler to absorb it. And if he didn't need it, he would simply kill his opponent. Though he had inherited the god's killing sword array from Joy, he hadn't even used the purple or a godly way, as control of the Buddha Emperor's sword did not call for it. Before Quentin could say anything, Zen had rushed towards him with the Buddha Emperor's sword. Quentin had improved his strength a lot. At the very least, he wouldn't be defeated like he was last time. After all, his cultivation base was a great realm higher than Zen's. After activating his godly tile, he had indeed displayed a powerful theurgy. He was able to control the invisible Buddha Emperor's sword by using the greenwood godly way to make special willows. With the Buddha Emperor's sword restrained, Zen took out the heavenly tooth sword without hesitation. If the Buddha Emperor's sword was used to kill, the heavenly tooth sword was mainly used to hunt, which would usually bring destruction upon the opponent. Under the hunt of the heavenly tooth sword, Quentin's defense was instantly broken. However, before any more damage could be inflicted, Quentin suddenly shouted, "Wait! I still have something to say." The two swords immediately halted in front of Quentin. Zen frowned, curious at the sudden interruption. Warriors in the arena of legends didn't really die, so his opponent wouldn't beg for mercy, would he? "I wanted to tell you at the start. You didn't even give me a chance," Quentin said gloomily. "Someone requested me to tell you to go out of your room and meet with her in the Hall of True Gods." It turned out, Zen never left his room. The people in the Hall of True Gods didn't have the chance to talk to him and could only send him messages this way. However, Zen immediately fought Quentin as soon as they met, never giving him the chance to speak. For Quentin, losing to Zen was not a big deal. But it was certainly a huge deal if he couldn't relay the message successfully. "The person who asked you to pass the message was sure that I will challenge you?" Zen asked curiously. "Of course not," Quentin answered. "But she did inform the top 130 true gods from whom you might choose one." Zen frowned. "Who is it?" The true gods at the top of the rankings all had extraordinary backgrounds. Most of them were direct descendants of wealthy clans. Who had the influence to do so? Zen chewed on his lip. Even if Nellie ranked first, it was still impossible for her to do that, wasn't it? Chapter 1875, Dongfang Clan. "Her name is Pearl Dongfang, ranked second in the Hall of True Gods," Quentin answered. Pearl Dongfang. Zen knew he heard this name before but hadn't paid that much attention to it. Currently, the top 3 low-ranked true gods in the Hall of True Gods were as follows: Nellie Mu, Pearl Dongfang, and Laquisha Han. They were all women, which hadn't really happened before. Harold also mentioned Dongfang clan in his speech earlier. This clan ranked first among the floating islands. Zen hadn't come in contact with any of the low-ranked true gods of the Dongfang clan yet. Since they were ranked first, it was only natural to assume that the Dongfang clan had very high points at their disposal. Zen couldn't be too sure though, since he never met any of them as he fought his way up the Hall of True Gods. "Why does she want to see me?" he asked. He didn't really know this so-called Pearl Dongfang after all. Quentin shook his head. "I don't know. I'm just here to deliver a message. You can go ask her if you want. I admit defeat now." With their battle ended, Zen immediately made his way to the door. From the doorway, he had a good view of the spiraling rooms in the Hall of True Gods. The height he was on indicated that he was almost at its peak. Each time he pushed open the door of his room, a crowd always awaited him, which always caught him by surprise. A few true gods simply stared at him in silence, not daring to come close, including Laquisha and Nellie, while a woman stood beside the door, waiting with a calm expression. This woman's face was covered with light blue gauze, revealing only her eyes that reflected a faint ray of light. Despite having her face covered, her eyes were terribly expressive and were enough to convey 1,000 words to anyone who looked into them. "You're finally out," she said. Are you Pearl Dongfang? Zen asked. The woman smiled and nodded in reply. Pearl Dongfang rarely came to the Hall of True Gods during this period of time. She heard about the anonymous man but never really had the chance to come into contact with him since he never went out of his room. Her status on the floating islands was far beyond Zen's imagination. As Quentin emphasized, her words were law. A mere statement from her was absolute and could not be disobeyed. He didn't fight Zen seriously and merely imparted what Pearl wanted him to say because she ordered him to. Under normal circumstances, Quentin would have fought his best. Do you also want to challenge me? Zen asked directly. Despite this woman coming from the first-ranked clan among the floating islands, Zen did not see it fit to warrant her any special treatment, mostly because he didn't really have a good first impression of the Dongfang clan and also because they were on Harold's list. To Zen, these wealthy clans Harold had listed belonged to the same force, with Dongfang clan as the most prosperous. They were his enemies as far as he was concerned. Pearl shook her head. I'm not interested in your points. What is it then? He asked. I heard that you've cultivated the Buddha Emperor sword in the God's killing sword array. You most probably inherited it from Joy from the Purple Soul Hall, right? I'm not sure how you cultivated the third stage of the power shaping, but I think you're qualified, she started saying out of the blue. Zen frowned. Qualified for what? To join our Dongfang clan, she said, her tone surprisingly firm, leaving him no room to argue. Both Nellie and Laquisha frowned when they heard this. A few other disciples of the wealthy clans also seemed unhappy. The Dongfang clan was still domineering as usual. Since he performed the Buddha Emperor sword and had said those words to her after Harold's fighting, Laquisha was almost certain he was Zen. He had been in Joy's palace and learned the Buddha Emperor sword, how could the anonymous man be anyone else but him? However, Zen refused to admit it, so Laquisha couldn't really say anything. Besides, there was still a chance that it had all been coincidences. Zen shook his head. I refuse, he replied to Pearl. He never expected to come out of his room for such a thing. Despite the rejection, Pearl didn't seem to be annoyed at all. This is a great opportunity for many people. Even if they ask, they won't be able to get it. You don't have to give it up. I've already joined another floating island. I'm not going to change my position, Zen insisted. We will talk to the Han clan. There is no need to worry about it, Pearl countered. Laquisha couldn't help but huff in anger when she heard this. Pearl clearly knew that the anonymous man belonged to the Han clan but still insisted he join the Dongfang clan. It was no secret that all disciples were afraid and wary of this first-ranked clan. They could offend either the Sword clan or the Moon clan, but never the Dongfang clan. As time went by, the disciples strictly avoided incurring any conflict from the people of the Dongfang clan. However, Laquisha couldn't help but burst out, having taken great offense by Pearl's complete disregard for the Han clan. As she took a step forward, Nellie couldn't help but sneer, shouldn't you mind your own business? Shouldn't you? Laquisha shot back. You know that the Dongfang clan is always like this. Their people see no reason, Nellie reminded her. The Mu clan and the Dongfang clan had a good relationship, but it was more of a superior subordinate type of alliance. Holy beings of various wealthy clans also had disputes in the Hall of Holy Beings. The Dongfang clan always held the upper hand. Aside from the Moon clan and the Sword clan, nobody else dared to come in conflict with them. Laquisha snorted in reply to Nellie. She could let other things pass, but not this one. However, before she could even open her mouth, Zen already had an answer. This has nothing to do with the Han clan. Pearl, however, still looked indifferent. It also has nothing to do with you whether you join our clan or not. She was always polite and did not have an overbearing attitude, mostly because she didn't take Zen's opinion seriously. The Dongfang clan always got what it wanted after all. Even if the Holy Emperor of the Han clan himself didn't want to give Zen up, he would have no choice if her clan insisted on having the young man. The holy beings were divided into different classes and the Holy Emperor of the Han clan was considered to be at the top. However, he was no better than Mike, who had been so excellent many years ago. Mike was one of the few who refused to bow down to the Dongfang clan, but he ended up dying. As Zen looked into Pearl's beautiful eyes, he saw nothing but contempt. He had already joined the Purple Soul Hall, and even if he wasn't in the floating islands, he would still refuse the invitation. There was a 10-second pause as the two of them stared each other down. Then, Zen broke the silence with a chuckle. I don't know if it's because I didn't make myself clear or if there's something wrong with your head. Whatever the case, I can only tell you these two words. What? Pearl asked. Zen's nose flared. Idiot off, he exclaimed before going back into his room and slamming the door shut in his wake. The Hall of True Gods was rendered completely silent. It had been many years since the Dongfang clan rose into power. Their disciples were even more distinguished than other warriors and everyone else was extremely cautious when dealing with them. However, this anonymous man just scolded Pearl, even insinuating that there was something wrong with her head. It was a very big offense. The anonymous man, in effect, had just signed his own death sentence for having gone against the Dongfang clan. None of them were aware of the fact that Zen was already set on leaving the floating islands, as per Harold's suggestion. Nellie was extremely surprised by how things turned out, not expecting the anonymous man to be so bold. Laquisha, meanwhile, was delighted and couldn't help but notice the anonymous man's temperament to be completely in line with Zen's. Chapter 1876, Change. Pearl's eyes were like two pools of anger as she stood perfectly still. She was only a mere lobbyist in her clan. Generally speaking, the powerful clans on the floating islands were ranked like a pyramid. The top 3 clans were far more powerful than the ordinary clans and were the ones that were completely in control. In addition, only those 3 powerful clans were qualified to demand warriors from other ordinary clans, and the latter couldn't refuse. What was worse was that they could dominate and oppress those clans if they wanted. Back then, it was the Qian clan that had been oppressed. They had offended the Dongfang clan, but they did not have a direct conflict. However, the Dongfang clan allied with several other clans to crush the Qian clan in the arena of legends. Therefore, the Qian clan's rank dropped sharply from their original 13th place, and soon fell out of the whole rankings. According to the rules, they had no choice but to evacuate the Time Sea and watch their floating island sink into the waters. That said a lot about the dominant role of the top 3 clans in the Time Sea. After Pearl had spent quite a while by the gate of Zen's room, she turned around and left. Just as she was about to leave the Hall of True Gods for her room, a voice said, he shouldn't be a direct disciple of the Han clan. The warriors of humble origin are always very disobedient. Pearl turned and looked coldly at a grinning Nellie. In turn, she stepped back a little in fear that she might take her anger out on her. You're right, he is from the Han clan, but they did not train him. It's useless to threaten an arrogant guy like him, she responded. Then, she turned to Laquisha and said, ask your elders to give me the anonymous man. In reality, Laquisha was already annoyed at the fact that Pearl looked down upon her clan, so she replied coldly, why? Because of the reputation of my clan, said Pearl. But we don't necessarily have the anonymous man, Laquisha stressed. She thought about the strong influence of the Dongfang clan on the Time Sea, so she said what she had said for her clan to be considered. However, Pearl shook her head and said, I think Joy knows very well whether he belongs to your clan or not. Forget it, it's useless to talk to you. I will just go to your clan and personally ask for him some other time. When she was done, she gently pushed open the door to her room and disappeared in front of everyone. The top disciples of the powerful clans in the Hall of True Gods bowed their heads down and filled the area with whispers. None of them had thought that the Han clan would offend the Dongfang clan because of the anonymous man. They strongly believed that the anonymous man came from the Han clan because of the god's killing sword array that he had used. However, that was not certain yet, and the Han clan might not even know about it. After a few more discussions, they soon returned to their rooms. Since Zen had randomly challenged Quentin, he might choose to challenge someone else again. No one wanted to miss such an opportunity. In the Spiritual Heart Hall, Laquisha left the Jade Wall of Legends as well. She freshened herself up, and then quietly made her way further into the hall. Next, she walked on an eerily quiet road. At the end of the road was a transmission platform, and under it were 6 armed guards who stood perfectly still. When they saw a figure approach them, one of them took a few steps forward and shouted, this is the forbidden land of the Han clan. No one is allowed to intrude. Yet Laquisha continued to walk, and when she was close enough, the guard recognized her. Your Highness. Your Highness. The rest of the guards followed suit and bowed in respect. Your Highness, the Holy Emperor refuses to receive guests lately. If you don't have anything important, the guard said in a low voice. Those guards watched over the palace of the Holy Emperor, which was located in the inner part of the floating island. A transmission array was needed to enter it. Joy had tried to trespass it last time, but the guards were responsible and loyal to the Emperor. They had suffered a lot from the fight with Joy. I have to see my father. It's something important, Laquisha stated in her usual flat voice. But, the guard protested. On the other hand, Laquisha didn't bother to argue with him and walked straight to the transmission platform. The guards might be loyal to the Emperor, but they didn't dare to stop her. She walked around the transmission platform, and then a faint blue light flashed through it. Her figure sank into it and disappeared in front of the guards. It wasn't long before Laquisha was finally inside the inner part of the floating island. A gentle breeze carted through her hair as she was greeted with the sight of a huge palace. Ever since she came back from the divine refinement forbidden land, she rarely saw her father. Even if she did, her father had been much more unenthusiastic, and she did not know why. In the middle of the palace was an empty hall, where a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes sat upright, as if he was in meditation. He was Samuel, the holy being of the Han clan. "Father." Laquisha's voice cut through the silence. She entered the palace and curtsied to her father. The said man opened his eyes and asked, "Laquisha, what's wrong?" "I want to tell you what happened in the arena of legends," she said. "You are not supposed to meddle in these things," he said with a small smile. "I know, but what I say may affect the ranking of our floating island," answered Laquisha earnestly. "Go ahead then." "Father, did you know that a proven godly warrior who can compete above his level has recently shown up in the arena of legends?" To this, Samuel nodded. While the holy beings indeed didn't pay much attention to the arena of legends, they would ask about it when the floating islands were ranked. After all, the ranking was very important for all powerful clans on the floating islands. The points that the anonymous man had obtained were enough to change the ranks of the powerful clans, so someone had already reported it to Samuel. He had indeed heard about the anonymous man. "If I am not wrong, the anonymous man should be someone from the Han clan in the Purple Soul Hall," Laquisha added. As she spoke, Zen's figure materialized in her mind. "What, is that true?" Needless to say, Samuel was surprised. The person who had reported to him didn't say such details. After all, Zen hadn't shown his Buddha Emperor sword before. However, Laquisha was right in the Hall of True Gods, so she had known about the news firsthand. "Yes, it seems that he has practiced Aunt Joy's God's killing sword array, but strangely, he used the illusory sword," she continued. "The illusory sword? That's impossible," Samuel noted and shook his head. As a holy being, he knew very well that proving godly warriors could not master the cross-world theurgy. While the ordinary true gods might be able to develop the illusory sword by power shaping, they couldn't use it in a sword array, because without the power of the cross-world theurgy, they had to hold the illusory sword in their hands all the time. Nonetheless, Laquisha didn't try to persuade her father and instead added, "Now that he has won 31 consecutive wins, his points should have risen to about 1.6 million. Oh, those are higher than Alfredo's points." Alfredo, a consummate true god and the leader of his clan, only had 1.26 million points in the arena of legends. Moreover, he had recently lost an open battle. Samuel was overjoyed. It was a great fortune for his clan to have such a talented disciple. But today, Pearl suddenly appeared in the Hall of True Gods. She demanded the anonymous man to join her clan, his daughter disclosed. As Samuel heard those words, his smile quickly faded. He surely wasn't afraid of a little girl like Pearl. However, since the Dongfang clan sent Pearl to make such a demand, it meant that they had already noticed the anonymous man. "What did the anonymous man say?" he asked. "He asked her to mess off," Laquisha said with a little smile. Samuel frowned. "Then why did you come here today? Can you refuse the request if the Dongfang clan asks you for the anonymous man?" Laquisha sincerely asked. Her father had always catered to her wants ever since she was a child. This time, she hoped that he would agree again. Meanwhile, Samuel remained quiet for a while and sighed heavily. "The truth is, I, as well as our clan, have been worried over the years. You are still young, so I don't want you to worry. If the anonymous man is really from our clan, I'm afraid I can't refuse the Dongfang clan when they come. Why, you know, he will make a great contribution to our clan." Laquisha responded a bit heatedly. Yet, Samuel stood firm and shook his head. "It's because the time sea is going to change again," he said in a serious voice. Chapter 1877, A Small Advice. The things the Holy Emperor did this year had puzzled many members of the Han clan. After they had become enemies with the Qin clan, he also tried his best to please the Leng clan and betrothed the Princess Royal to them. Now, he even agreed to the dissolution of the Purple Soul Hall as requested by Alfredo. What they didn't know was that Samuel himself forced Joy to dissolve the Purple Soul Hall and that Alfredo was actually under his jurisdiction. On the day Joy and Alfredo quarreled, the former went to Samuel seeking justice but ended up going back to the Purple Soul Hall in silence. The Time Sea's rules were not absolute. In the past, cases of revisions on the ruling slate abounded. However, not every wealthy clan above the Time Sea had the ability to modify the rules. The Han clan's fortune that they accumulated over the years was only enough for them to slightly modify some words on the ruling slate. On the other hand, the Dongfang clan could afford to revise an entire rule. Of course, rules couldn't be changed randomly. The Hall of Holy Beings still had restraints and each revision would only commence after many discussions among the clans. Moreover, a rule that would only prove beneficial to the Dongfang clan would cost them. For example, if they made it so that they could be the only floating island on the Time Sea, then they would need countless divine might coins. It would be impossible to afford. This time, however, there was a big possibility for the Dongfang clan to succeed in changing the rule. They had already obtained the approval of the Moon clan and the Sword clan. The union of 9 wealthy clans was led by the Dongfang clan. Though the Hall of Holy Beings was not ruled by the Dongfang clan alone, they still occupied 9 seats in the Hall of Holy Beings. The connections also ran deep. The Mu clan and Zhou clan were quite close, the Zhao clan was in an amicable relationship with the Fang clan, and the Tang clan was close to the Li clan. The Dongfang clan, to a certain extent, could control the entirety of the Hall of Holy Beings. Challenging them would be tantamount to challenging the entire Hall of Holy Beings. So long as the Dongfang clan got the acquiescence of the Moon clan and the Sword clan, they could pass whatever revision they wanted, and passing such a rule would no doubt have a far-reaching effect on all the wealthy clans. To maintain the Han clan's position, Samuel had to bow down to the powers above. This was the reason why he approached the Leng clan. He didn't really want to explain all of this to his daughter. "You're too young. You will only understand in time. The anonymous man who can have 31 consecutive wins has far exceeded the young me. I appreciate him and he most certainly will achieve great things in the future. However, if the Dongfang clan fancies him then they can just take him away," he said lightly. Samuel did not really attach that much importance to this issue. First of all, it wasn't certain that the anonymous man was from the Han clan. Samuel was currently trying to suck up to the Leng clan in order to join the union of the wealthy clans. If the Dongfang clan wanted him, Samuel could give the anonymous man to them. Besides, there were only a few days before the new rankings were announced. The Dongfang clan wouldn't be in a hurry even if they wanted to get the anonymous man, since they didn't really care about the points. Their position was currently unshakable. Since the anonymous man accumulated a lot of points for the Han clan, Samuel could use this as a way to impart favor onto the Dongfang clan. It was the perfect plan. Of course, he was currently unaware of the things that went through his daughter's mind, nor did he know of the fact that she had already known the anonymous man in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land and even had a secret crush on him, let alone that he was actually the son of Mike. Her father's words defied all her expectations. "Father, how could you do such a thing?" Laquisha couldn't help but despair. Laquisha was an innocent girl. To her, the anonymous man made such a huge contribution to the Han clan and they should pay him back for it. Since Zen was unwilling to go to the Dongfang clan, then the Han clan should do their best to keep him. It was only the right thing to do whether or not the anonymous man was actually Zen. What her father planned to do was just so utilitarian to her. But she still wanted to argue, but her father merely shook his head in dismissal. "Stop worrying about this. Alfredo will take care of it. I heard you had a fight with the boy from the Leng clan." That's right. Apart from the matter about the anonymous man, Laquisha also wanted to talk about her marriage with Langston. She didn't expect that her father would be the first to bring it up. "Langston Leng is a very outstanding man. Your marriage to him is very important to our clan. I'll ask Alfredo to take you to Leng clan one of these days to apologize." "All will be well," Samuel said. In truth, Laquisha never entertained the notion of ever marrying Langston. She was filled with helplessness and was very obedient back then. However, now that she encountered Zen once again, how could she be willing to marry that guy? Laquisha had always thought that she was the apple of her father's eye, but in the end, she was a mere bargaining chip to him. She couldn't help the surge of grief that welled up in her heart and could only look up to her father with cold eyes. "I don't want to marry him." Samuel, however, was oblivious to his daughter's mood. "Langston is an excellent man. He may not be as good as your brother, but he is sure to become a consummate true god under his excellent cultivation." He continued to praise the young man, but Laquisha saw it fit to interrupt him. "In father's eyes, am I only a thing that can be used to please the Leng clan? Is that all I'm ever good for?" Her question stunned Samuel silent. Despite being his child, Laquisha had no right to question him that way. More so, he was the holy emperor of their clan, which made her behavior even more inappropriate. However, he didn't really have that many children. He only had 2 daughters, Laquisha and Elena. If he had more children, then Laquisha would have ended up being severely punished for her actions. There was a trace of anger in his face as he scolded her. "How dare you?" "Yes, I dare. LaQuisha replied hotly, "If you really want to force me to marry that guy, then just kill me now." "You think I won't?" Samuel challenged, giving off an invisible aura. A holy being restrained his or her own aura so he or she looked like an ordinary true god most of the time, but in reality, their auras were extremely strong. When Samuel released his, the entire floating island of the Han clan quivered slightly. He could kill LaQuisha hundreds, thousands of times with just a single glance. However, the moment his aura spread out, Samuel took it back almost immediately. Holy beings were very much experienced in the cycles of life, so they had great control over their emotions. Having restrained his anger, Samuel sighed softly. "You can leave now. Let's talk about this some other day." "Let's talk about this now," LaQuisha insisted. However, her father simply waved his hand and released an invisible force, pushing her out of the palace. The gate also closed with a loud crash. LaQuisha trembled in anger in front of the palace. It took quite a while for her to calm down. At that moment, she suddenly thought of joy, then she slowly left here. In the arena of legends, Zen stood in the middle of a bloody red plain. This was exactly the space that was used when Harold challenged Rochelle. After winning 32 consecutive fights, Zen now had 1.85 million points, which far exceeded the amount Joy requested. He accepted Nellie's challenge, as promised. She slowly walked towards him with a smile. "It seems we will be on the same side in the future." "What do you mean?" Zen asked. "You will eventually join the Dongfang clan in the future. Our Mu clan is with the Dongfang clan, so we will naturally be on the same side," Nellie explained. "What?" Zen could only repeat the question. "It is a great honor to be liked by the Dongfang clan. A lot of true gods want to join their clan and there is no way to refuse if you are chosen by them. Pearl has a high status in the Dongfang clan, so it's not advisable to provoke her," Nellie continued. "Are you going to persuade me for her?" Zen asked. "Of course not. I'm just giving you some advice. It's also compensation for you once I win and collect all the points you've gotten so far," she said. Nellie then stretched out her white arms and let a red and green halo spread throughout her body. Chapter 1878. Blood-breaking bite. What kind of attitude did the Dongfang clan hold toward the anonymous man? And how would the Han clan react? Anyway, all that had nothing to do with Nellie. Her goal was to earn points from the anonymous man. Normally, no one would covet the anonymous man's points too much. The rankings of the floating islands usually changed every few decades. Even if someone managed to take the points of the anonymous man, they would then become the target of other warriors. Although Nellie was temporarily ranked the first among the low-ranked true gods, there was no guarantee that she would always win. Usually, the high points that a warrior gathered would slowly be diluted during the many battles. But now, the situation was different. The final rankings of the floating islands were about to be released. Nellie had already finished her 3 compulsory battles this month. And if she defeated the anonymous man, she would get all his points. That way, her feat was equivalent to a consummate true gods in the Mu clan. By then, her points would well exceed that of her sister Rochelle's. The key was to defeat the anonymous man in front of her, and Nellie was well prepared for this battle. Within the energy that spread out from her body were 2 completely different forces. One of the forces was the murdering godly way. In most powerful clans, warriors cultivated the 5 elements godly way. However, the Mu clan was different. The godly way that Murphy had mastered was the murdering godly way, and ever since then, it was also this godly way that almost all of the warriors in the Mu clan cultivated. Rochelle had cultivated it, and so had Nellie. However, there was a slight difference in the skill set of Nellie and that of her sister. When Nellie had been cultivating the murdering godly way, she had grasped another kind of godly way at the same time, the life godly way. When she had first encountered this new godly way, Nellie had been a little confused. It wasn't unheard of for warriors from rich and powerful clans to comprehend several kinds of godly ways at the same time, but they would all finally choose one godly way as their major godly way while the others would be their auxiliary godly ways. But when Nellie had condensed her godly tile, she had somehow condensed a unique dual godly tile. Her godly tile was split right in the middle. The left side was blood red while the right side was cyan green, and these 2 sides exuded 2 completely different auras. As soon as her father Murphy had heard about this, he had gone to the Godly Way tablet of the Life Godly Way to learn about it. Then, he had combined the murdering godly way he had comprehended with the life godly way to create the Thurgy Beyond way that was suitable for Nellie to cultivate. The murdering godly way and the life godly way were 2 extremes, like fire and water. However, Murphy, who had been immersed in the murdering godly way for countless divine eras, had figured out how to successfully combine the two godly ways. He had insisted that if Nellie succeeded in mastering the Thurgy, then she would definitely surpass her sister one day. To some extent, his words had come true. Nellie was ranked first among the low-ranked true gods. Ever since she had defeated Laquisha several months ago, she had not lost even a single battle. Phew, as the red and green light spread around them, it seemed as if all living creatures had come to life on the blood-red plain. Zen could feel strong vitality and vigor in the light. Black and red plants rapidly grew out of the ground one by one. These plants, which had been created by the life godly way, were radiating a strong killing aura, as if they were plants growing in the abyss demon region. It's about time. Nellie charged forward, running toward Zen like a deer in the forest. As she ran, she tightened her grip on the black short sword in her hand, and her ponytail swayed majestically behind her in the wind. Whoosh! It took only a split moment before the black short sword came slashing down toward Zen, as if it had cut off the space between them altogether. It was the first time that they were fighting with each other and they didn't know each other's strength, so they were sort of testing each other at first. Zen didn't take out his Buddha Emperor sword. Instead, he dodged Nellie's attack slightly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Nellie struck about 8 consecutive times, but Zen dodged all her strikes with his skillful bodily movement. Each time she swung the sword, there was a tide of blood about dozens of feet high behind Zen. It was the same Thurgy that Rochelle had used when fighting against Harold. All you can do is escape. A hint of impatience appeared in Nellie's eyes. People who practice the murdering godly way would also be affected by it, and they would gradually become addicted to slaughtering people. Rochelle was like this, and Nellie was no exception. Since Zen wasn't fighting with her head on and all of her strikes had failed to hit him, she felt extremely irritated. With a faint smile, Zen stretched out his hand like lightning in an attempt to take away Nellie's black short sword. You're too naive. A cold smile appeared on Nellie's face. This was her chance. She suddenly lifted her black short sword and said, "Blood-breaking bite." Her voice had hardly faded away when a blood snake shot out of the sword and turned its head to bite Zen on his arm. Although Zen retreated almost immediately, he wasn't able to avoid the snake's fangs. Unexpectedly, Nellie didn't take the opportunity to continue her attack. She just stood there and looked at Zen with pity. As Zen retreated, blood continued to gush out of his arm. Zen had retreated more than 100 feet in one go while blood spurted out madly from his arm, leaving a golden trail of blood on the ground. When he stopped, he raised his arm and looked closely. There was no wound in the place that the blood snake had bitten him. Instead, there was a unique blood-red circular mark. Inside that mark was a triangular hole from which his blood flowed out continuously. This tiny hole must have been where the blood snake had bitten him, but when had the circular mark been engraved on his arm? Besides, given that the blood energy of Zen's physical body was extremely powerful, the small wound should have been healed in the blink of an eye. However, while he had retreated, not only had the small wound not healed, but there seemed to be a strange force that was extracting the blood from his body. Even more strangely, his arm stopped bleeding when he stopped. "Why did you stop? Keep running," Nellie said with a faint smile. She abruptly shot out a blood-red sword radiance from over 100 feet away. Splash! In an instant, the sword radiance turned into a bloody tide that came at Zen overwhelmingly. Caught in a critical situation, Zen moved sideways by 30 feet, but just as he began to move, the blood in his arm spurted out madly again, leaving a 30-foot-long trail of blood behind him. "Don't you understand what's happening to you?" Nellie commented, her smile growing bigger. She continued, "I guess I overestimated your strength. You got hit by the blood-breaking bite in such a short time. As long as you move, blood will flow out from the wound until the last drop of blood in your body is sucked dry. When the blood-breaking Thurgy in the murdering godly way was employed, no matter what kind of defense the opponent was using, the opponent would suffer a horrible wound that was very difficult to heal. However, after Murphy had helped Nellie to combine the murdering godly way and the life godly way, he had created the blood-breaking bite with his new understanding of the life godly way. Once an opponent was hit by the blood-breaking bite, the wound they suffered would be impossible to heal. Moreover, as long as the wound moved, it would cause the power in the mark to rapidly draw the opponent's blood. "A very interesting Thurgy beyond way," Zen replied. Then, a smile appeared on his face too as he asked, "What if I don't move? Wouldn't this technique become useless then?" After saying that, he sat down cross-legged on the ground. "You are full of yourself," Nellie sneered. "I want to know how long you can survive my attacks without moving." But before she could finish her sentence, she saw some kind of energy reverberating around Zen. The streams of strength source were so heavy that they distorted the space around him. Before long, 4 invisible swords appeared. The Buddha Emperor sword, the Heavenly Tooth sword, and the Long Vine sword floated horizontally in front of his chest, while the Grand Sun sword circled above his head continuously to protect him. Then, Zen said, "I want to know if I can kill you without moving." God's killing sword array. You've really mastered it. Nellie's eyebrows twitched slightly, and a look of vigilance appeared on her face. Once again, before Nellie could finish her words, Zen waved his hands gently and began to use the separate controlling of the purple or a godly way. The Buddha Emperor sword and the Heavenly Tooth sword became like twin stars in the sky, spiraling into the air and shooting down toward Nellie. Meanwhile, the Long Vine sword quietly disappeared into the ground. When it came out the next moment, there were countless invisible vines formed by strength condensed around it, and these vines were rushing toward Nellie. The 4 swords of the God's killing sword array were working together to fight the enemy. The Long Vine sword was mainly used to bind the enemy before the Buddha Emperor sword and the Heavenly Tooth sword came to kill the enemy. As for the Grand Sun sword, which continued to hover above Zen's head, it was used to protect the owner. This was the first time that Zen was defending himself against an enemy with a complete God's killing sword array. While simultaneously controlling the 4 swords with the separate controlling technique, he activated the infinity ruler with the internal momentum. Then, golden rings appeared in his eyes. He looked at the wound on his arm. What Nellie had cultivated was the murdering godly way, and Zen wanted to absorb it into the infinity ruler. Moreover, he wanted to know what the mysterious blood-breaking bite was. Chapter 1879, The Avenging Body. Nellie believed that she would be totally invincible after Zen was injured by the blood-breaking bite. Finally, it would be her time to shine. However, it never occurred to her that she would be in grave danger in the very next moment. A thought crossed her mind. The rumor is true. No wonder the Dongfang clan was so eager to enlist Zen. One could have the cross-world Thurgy only after they created a universe. If this was true, it meant that there was a possibility of a universe existing in the body of the anonymous man. There was no way it could be viable, could it? Regardless of whether this was possible or not, one thing was certain, that the inner world of the anonymous man was very special. At least, it was the first time that this kind of a thing occurred in the Lord knew how many divine eras. Maybe the reason why the Dongfang clan wanted to take the anonymous man back was that they wanted to study him, and not simply because they admired his talent. The movements of the Long Vine sword were very strange. The invisible power of the vines intertwined Nellie, trapping her, and forcing her to use almost all her skills. Shadow escape. Blood swelled in her eyes. Her speed more than doubled suddenly. Even though she was imprisoned by the dense vines released by the Long Vine sword, she was still like a nimble butterfly, creating an unpredictable trajectory by constantly shuttling about. She was being followed by the Buddha Emperor sword and the Heavenly Tooth sword. In just a few seconds, Nellie was in great danger. The Buddha Emperor sword had almost hit her on the head from the front, and the Heavenly Tooth sword had left a bloody wound on her arm. As for Zen, he paid close attention to the wound on his arm, and didn't fully engage the 4 swords. If he used the full extent of his mind power to control the God's killing sword array, Nellie would be in more pain. If Zen could absorb the blood-breaking bite, imprint a mark on his opponent's body, and then drive the Buddha Emperor sword to chase her all the way, the opponent would be in pursuit until she died. But this Thurgy seems to be more complicated. It should be a Thurgy beyond 2 godly ways. A golden light flickered in Zen's eyes, while the light on the infinity ruler too continued dancing. Some moments later, the light on the ruler split into 2 parts, and one of these stopped at the life godly way. Zen had already absorbed the life godly way in the heavenly Han house, but the life godly way hidden in the blood-breaking bite was a completely different Thurgy. The second light stayed on another scale on which there was a small amount of red blood. It was the murdering godly way. Blood is a fundamental component of life energy. The life godly way knows everything about living beings. The murdering godly way is an extreme path of killing. Those who combine the two are indeed very clever, Zen sighed as he interpreted the internal momentum. It was indeed very difficult to merge these 2 completely contradictory ways into one. There were too many outstanding talents in the divine land. Of course, he was not aware of the fact that the blood-breaking bite was originally created by Murphy. When he first arrived at the divine land, Zen believed that the emotion-closing godly way could be a match for other godly ways. But now, it looked like he was wrong. The emotion-closing godly way was known as a forbidden godly way, although Zen had no idea about the reason behind it. It was the best of the 3,000 godly ways as it had incredible power. At least, he hadn't yet come across a godly way that was more powerful than the emotion-closing godly way. However, the emotion-closing godly way alone was not enough to crush these low-rank true gods. If he succeeded in his own cultivation, he could take advantage of the godly ways he had mastered and study them carefully to try and see if he could create a powerful theurgy beyond all ways. Unfortunately, Zen couldn't find a solution in the internal momentum. It seemed that the blood-breaking bite would not disappear until a specific period of time, which meant that Zen was trapped in the place where he was. But, Nelly seems to be unable to resist my attack too, Zen said as he regarded Nelly in the distance with a faint smile on his lips. When he used all his thoughts to control the god's killing sword array, Nelly would experience greater pressure. Phew, the heavenly tooth sword, which had been chasing Nelly, suddenly turned around and flew away to the other side. Meanwhile the Buddha Emperor's sword was still attacking Nelly strongly. The two swords sandwiched her and soon blocked her right in the middle. Fighting Nelly is easier than I expected. She is already the first in the low-rank true gods. Maybe I can skip a rank, and challenge the mid-rank true gods. Zen gave her a smile. He didn't know why such a thought had occurred to him. Of course, he was just thinking about it. He had enough points now, and he had also completed the task given by Joy. It would be a big blow to him if he really got defeated by some mid-rank true god. Swish, swish, swish. When Nelly was resisting the relentless vines, a powerful vine entangled around her delicate white ankle. As the first vine twined around her ankle, a second one followed naturally. Soon, Nelly was completely entwined in vines. At the same time, Zen's two long swords were pointed at her, one in front of her and the other behind her. It's over, Zen said with a grin. He intended to kill her with the two long swords swiftly and without hesitation. Just when the Buddha Emperor's sword was about to slit her chest, Nelly suddenly burst into a cackle, and said, "Is it really over?" Ha ha, a gaping hole was created in her chest due to the impact of the Buddha Emperor's sword. The heavenly tooth sword was like a saw, grinding on her physical body and tearing it apart. At the same time, a strange scene was unfolding. The blood that burst forth from Nelly's body did not fall to the ground, but instead gathered on her body. It seemed unwilling to leave. In a matter of seconds, Nelly's flesh was completely shredded, and the blood flowing from her body enveloped her completely. She's still alive. That's impossible, Zen murmured while staring at the bloody person in surprise. At least Zen's victory was not determined in this arena. The blood on Nelly's misshapen figure was still slowly ebbing and swirling, and the originally blurred face gradually reformed to reveal Nelly's facial features. The blood above the head began forming the outline of her hair. An identical Nelly took shape, but she was made up entirely of blood. This is the second time I have been forced to launch the avenging body in the arena of legends by member of the Han clan, Nelly explained flatly. Avenging body? Zen inquired, as his eyebrows rose slightly. She had used the power of her avenging body the last time when she had a showdown with Laquisha. Laquisha's preternatural fire had burned across the skies, which had driven Nelly to a dead end. Before dying, she had performed the avenging body. It wasn't difficult to restore one's body with the life godly way. Many true gods who practiced the life godly way could do this easily. However, the avenging body was not a new body. It was an indestructible body created using the body before death and was a way for revenge. Nelly attacked Laquisha once she pushed out Nelly's avenging body. In the end Laquisha was defeated and she ranked third in the Hall of True Gods. If this was outside the arena of legends, Nelly's avenging body would also appear after she was killed. However, she could only use this skill once. Once the avenging body disappeared, Nelly would also die forever. Thus, this was a fatal tactic that could only be used once in her life. However, Nelly could use it again and again in the arena of legends. It turned out that she was taking advantage of the loopholes in it. Shadow escape. Swish. In an instant, Nelly turned into a bloodlight and zoomed toward Zen at an incredible speed. Slash. Sitting on the ground, Zen gently lifted his finger. The Buddha Emperor's sword pierced through Nelly's blood body, but no matter how it went in and came out, or how many times he did it did not cause any harm to her. If it's really just all blood, I don't think that any amount of strength that she unleashes will do any harm to me, Zen speculated as he stared at Nelly's blood body. When Nelly was getting closer and closer to Zen, he saw a faint blood light shining from the surface of her body. A strong power emitted from her body, and she went straight for Zen. Unable to dodge, Zen had no option but to take it head-on. Zen's body far exceeded the strength of an ordinary true god, so he wouldn't fall behind. Ha ha, a muffled sound came through. Thanks to the violent impact, Nelly turned into a ball of blood and flew away. The blood began transforming again and finally took shape of Nelly's features. There was a hint of mockery on her face. Zen didn't suffer any major losses in this collision. Although Nelly's avenging body was very strong, it wouldn't cause much damage by crashing into Zen's physical body. However, during the collision, he had been pushed back about 300 feet. He sprayed blood across the 300 feet because of the wound caused by the blood-breaking bite. Dang it, what bad luck, Zen cursed. He was depressed now. Chapter 1880, Intense Competition. Even though Zen's blood vitality was very strong, he would not be able to withstand it if he continued to bleed at such an alarming rate. Moreover, Zen could think of no better option to deal with Nelly, who had transformed into the avenging body. You were very arrogant about your recent victories. Let's see how long you can withstand this now. He could hear Nelly's chilling voice coming through a distance. At the same time, her body mutated into a blood shadow and charged towards Zen once again. Zen took a deep breath and started to gather his inner strength. Puff! There was a massive sound as they collided against each other. Zen was hit again, and with the impact, he shot a great distance away. Blood was still gushing out from his arm. As for Nelly, her avenging body was blasted into a ball of blood again by Zen. However, the blood quickly gathered up the molecules to shape her body again. If the current situation continued to prevail, he was bound to lose, sooner or later. Zen was completely at his wits' end. Moreover, Nelly didn't even give Zen time to strategize. She kept attacking him non-stop. The impact of each collision was getting stronger. Although he was not physically injured by the collision, he kept losing a lot of blood along the way. Soon, with the rapid blood loss, Zen started to feel dizzy. On the other hand, Nelly was dead, physically. Even if Zen didn't destroy her avenging body, it would gradually disappear on its own. However, in the arena of legends, it didn't matter who died first. What mattered was the victory and defeat. Zen finally understood the amazing combination of Nelly's avenging body and blood-breaking bite. If someone killed her first in the Divine Land, even if she successfully became an avenging body, they would still be able to run away from her. However, things would be different if they were first hit by the blood-breaking bite. The blood in their body would continue to drain as long as they kept running away. If they didn't run away, they would have to fight the immortal avenging body. These two powerful skills were a genius combination. Bang! Under another collision, Zen retreated back to a full distance of around 70 feet. As he lost more and more blood, the meridians in Zen's body became even more depleted. He couldn't even find the strength to operate. As he grew more dizzy, his vision started to get blurry. The God's Killing Sword Array was a powerful skill in itself, but it obviously had no effect on Nelly in her current state. The avenging body was probably created by the fusion of the murdering godly way and the life godly way, along with the extraction of one's own blood. Anyways, it is created by blood. What if I use the blood-breaking bite to deal with it myself? If Zen could leave a mark of the blood-breaking bite on Nelly's body, it would definitely drain her blood as well. The problem was that the avenging body was just a mass of blood. Even if she completely drained off her entire blood, would the blood still be able to merge together again? Whoosh! As he was considering that option, Nelly rushed towards him once again. Her eyes flashed with a sense of triumph. It seemed that this anonymous man who had made a record of 32 consecutive wins would finally lose to her. Her sister had earlier lost to Harold. It was now her responsibility to defeat her opponent and salvage the Mew clan's pride as well as points. Seeing his opponent getting closer and closer to him, Zen got ready to boost his spirit. Both the scales of the life godly way and the murdering godly way on the infinity ruler beamed with a faint luster. The moment Nelly crashed into him, a red light suddenly shot out from Zen's body. The light turned into a small snake head, and sunk its fangs into Nelly's head. What is this? Blood-breaking bite. Nelly was completely stunned. Her actual body, which was on the outside of the Jade Wall of Legends, located on the floating island of the Mew clan, suddenly trembled. The servants of the Mew clan were perplexed when they saw Nelly's body trembling. Generally speaking, after a warrior's soul entered the Jade Wall of Legends, his or her body would be in a state of stillness, rarely reacting to any external forces. It was obvious that Nelly was completely in a state of shock, or else her body would not have trembled so much. The servants exchanged nervous glances with each other, wondering what could have happened inside the Jade Wall of Legends. How is this even possible? Nelly thought to herself. How did this anonymous man manage to use the blood-breaking bite? It is an extremely difficult skill that my father created especially for me. It could be used only if one cultivates both the life godly way and the murdering godly way. It is restricted by the godly tile. In other words, it was impossible to use this skill unless the powers of the life godly way and the murdering godly way were infused. She had practiced this skill for several years and she knew the challenges one had to face. However, this anonymous man had used this skill so easily, as if he had been practicing for years. Of course, she overlooked the fact that the anonymous man could use the purple aura godly way and the separate controlling skill as well even though he didn't possess the purple power body. Time seemed to pass at a slow pace as she pondered over this problem. When she snapped out of her trance, a small mark had already appeared on her forehead. Puff! At the same time, she once again collided into Zen. Under the impact of their collision, they once again shot back in opposite directions. Zen retreated a full distance of 100 feet this time. His face turned deathly pale due to a large amount of blood loss. But this time, Zen had deliberately increased the impact force, so even Nellie was sent flying to the other side at a greater speed. As she flew backward, fresh red blood gushed out from the mark Zen had left on her forehead. Splash! Her avenging body was much lighter than Zen's body. Every time they collided, she would fly a distance of several thousand feet. As her blood continued to spill out from the mark, the mass of blood that formed her avenging body finally splattered evenly on the bloody wilderness, forming a blood ribbon that was 1,000 feet long. Is this really the end? Zen thought as he gasped for breath. Zen had doubts about destroying her avenging body, as the blood would still merge together. To top it, the Arena of Legends was yet to announce his victory. As Zen had predicted, after a short while, the scattered blood suddenly started to move. The ends of the blood ribbon quickly intertwined, and soon formed into half of Nellie's head. It slowly floated in the air, while her eyes continued to stare at Zen coldly. She is still alive. Zen was dismayed looking at half her form. I really can't fathom how you managed to learn my blood-breaking bite without even forming your own godly tile, Nellie said in a low voice. She never in her wildest dream imagined that such a situation would occur during her fight with the anonymous man. Is it really necessary for me to answer you now? Zen said calmly as he furiously started plotting other methods to defeat his opponent. It's not necessary. I will directly ask you for the truth after the Dongfang clan finds out your real identity, said Nellie. It really surprised me that you could use my blood-breaking bite to deal with my avenging body. But unfortunately, it's not enough to destroy my avenging body. Her blood that was splattered on the ground started to move. It quickly converged to small blood beads which seemed to be alive, while at the same time continuously flew towards Nellie's head. Soon, Nellie's body was fully formed, but the mark left by Zen using the blood-breaking bite was still imprinted on her forehead. It's not enough yet, but I think it should be enough after a few more attempts. Zen suddenly smiled. Although she couldn't see through Zen's blurry face, she could almost imagine his mocking smile. At the same time, the Buddha Emperor's sword had quietly appeared behind her head and smacked hard with its large, invisible blade. Bang! As Nellie hit towards Zen, her body once again turned into a blood ribbon because of the blood-breaking bite. One end of the blood ribbon was only a few feet away from Zen. This time, before the blood gathered into blood beads and shaped her body again, Zen summoned a pale blue flame. Ice Soul Flame. Zen seized the chance and banged heavily on the ground. An extremely cold aura quickly spread out, over the blood ribbon. In the blink of an eye, the blood ribbon was covered with thick ice. Now show if you can recover this time. Actually, he did have doubts whether the Ice Soul Flame would do the trick of destroying the immortal avenging body. Theoretically, even though the blood was frozen, the avenging body was still not destroyed. If that was the case, then he would have to stay in the arena and continue to fight it for days, months, or maybe even a few years. Then the winner would never be determined, would it? Fortunately, Zen's worry did not last too long. About 5 minutes later, the bloody wilderness slowly dissipated in front of his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he returned back to his room and the wall in front of him had recorded another victory. He had won now a total of 33 consecutive wins and his points had surpassed 2 million. Since he hadn't lost in a single match, his name still did not appear on the ranking list. Otherwise, with his current points, he would have already been ranked ahead of many consummate true gods.